Hello guys, welcome to Gringotts Hub. Today we have an incredible story for you. What if Harry claimed the Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell Lordships and forced the entire Malfoy family to kneel? If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Chapter 2, The Kneeling. The Wizengamot chamber hadn't been this full since the trial of Igor Karkaroff. Every seat in the gallery was packed. Reporters, ministry officials, curious onlookers who'd heard through the Fleur network that something unprecedented was happening. The whisper had spread through magical London like fiendfire. Harry Potter just walked into the Wizengamot wearing 3 lordship rings and shut down the Malfoy acquittal. Harry stood in the center of the chamber floor, exactly where the accused usually stood. But he wasn't accused of anything. He was the one doing the accusing, and the 3 rings on his left hand pulsed with a steady, ancient light, ruby, emerald, and the deep violet black of the Peverell stone. Lucius Malfoy sat in the defendant's chair, his face the color of old parchment. His solicitor, a wiry man named Thaddeus Crane, was whispering furiously in his ear, but Lucius wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on Harry's hand. On the Slytherin ring specifically. This is unprecedented, Chief Warlock Griselda Marchbanks said from her elevated seat, though her voice carried more fascination than objection. Lord Potter, Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell, you've invoked right of presence to halt these proceedings. The right is granted. State your purpose. Harry let the silence stretch for exactly 2 heartbeats. He'd learned that from watching Dumbledore. The old man had understood that silence was a weapon. My purpose is simple, Chief Warlock, Harry said, and his voice carried to every corner of the chamber without amplification. The Gryffindor ring seemed to ensure that. This body was about to acquit Lucius Malfoy of all charges related to the Second Wizarding War. For the second time in 20 years, this man was going to walk free after serving a Dark Lord, funding terrorism, and directly participating in torture and murder. My client has provided extensive testimony regarding the Imperius, Crane began. Shut up, Harry said. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just with such absolute certainty that Crane's mouth clicked closed. I was there in the graveyard when your client knelt willingly before Voldemort and begged forgiveness for not seeking him out. I was there in the Department of Mysteries when your client tried to murder 5 teenagers to retrieve a prophecy. I was there in Malfoy Manor when your client watched Hermione Granger be tortured on his drawing room floor and did nothing. Harry turned his gaze to Lucius. The Imperius defense is a lie, and everyone in this room knows it. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Several Wizengamot members shifted uncomfortably, some because they agreed, others because they'd been planning to vote for acquittal and had just realized the political winds were changing. Lord Potter, Marchbanks said carefully, while your testimony is noted, the purpose of right of presence is not to. I'm not here to testify, Harry said. I'm here to invoke the debt. The chamber went dead silent. Not quiet, silent, as if someone had cast a muffling charm over every soul present. Lucius Malfoy stood up. His solicitor grabbed his arm and Lucius shook him off violently, his grey eyes wide. You can't, he said. You wouldn't. Sit down, Lucius, Harry said, and there was something in his voice that made it sound less like a suggestion and more like gravity. Lucius sat. Not because he chose to, Harry could see it in the man's face, but because 3 lordships were speaking through that command and the magic in the room recognized authority. Kingsley Shacklebolt leaned forward in the minister's observation seat. His dark eyes were unreadable, but his fingers had gone white-knuckled on the armrests. For the benefit of this chamber, Harry said, turning in a slow circle to address everyone present, let me explain what I'm about to do, because I want no one to claim ignorance afterward. He clasped his hands behind his back. A life debt is not a metaphor. It is not a social nicety. It is a binding magical contract created when one witch or wizard saves the life of another. It is older than the ministry, older than Hogwarts, older than the Wizengamot itself. And it is enforceable by the creditor. He paused, letting that sink in. In my 6th year at Hogwarts, I saved Draco Malfoy from bleeding to death after a severing curse nearly killed him in a bathroom. Harry didn't mention that Snape had done the actual healing. The magic didn't care about that. Harry had gotten help, had refused to leave, had stemmed the bleeding with his own hands while screaming for someone, anyone, to come. The debt had formed. He'd felt it. First life debt. Somewhere in the gallery, he heard Draco Malfoy inhale sharply. Harry didn't look up. Not yet. In the room of requirement during the Battle of Hogwarts, I flew back into Fiendfire to pull Draco Malfoy off a collapsing tower of furniture. Ron Weasley and I together hauled him and Gregory Goyle out of that room. Without us, they burned. He kept his voice flat, factual. Second life debt. Now he did look up at the gallery, finding Draco immediately. The blond man was sitting ramrod straight, his face completely blank in that way that meant he was feeling everything and showing nothing. Narcissa sat beside him, her hand resting on his forearm. Her expression was different, calculating, watchful. She'd already worked out where this was going. And Narcissa Malfoy, Harry said, meeting her eyes directly, lied to Lord Voldemort's face in the Forbidden Forest. Told him I was dead when I wasn't. Saved my life so she could enter the castle and find her son. He inclined his head slightly toward her. That debt runs the other direction. She is my creditor. I acknowledge it freely. Narcissa's chin lifted almost imperceptibly. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, that he'd acknowledged it publicly. That he'd given her that. But here's the thing about life debts, Harry continued, turning back to Lucius. They bind blood. They bind family magic. 2 debts owed by the Malfoy heir to a triple lord, that's not a personal matter anymore. That is a house matter. And under the ancient laws that this body claims to uphold, he gestured at the carved walls, the centuries-old benches, the very stones of the chamber, a house that owes a life debt to a lord may be called to account. Chief Warlock. Crane was on his feet, his voice shrill. This is archaic, these laws haven't been invoked in 312 years, Marchbank said quietly. Since Lord Peverell the Younger called the House of Gaunt to account for a debt owed during the Goblin Rebellion of 1714. She looked at Harry with something that might have been respect, or might have been fear. The law stands. It was never repealed. Because the Sacred 28 made sure it wasn't, Harry said, letting a thin smile cross his face. They kept every ancient law that benefited them. Every pureblood privilege, every aristocratic protection, every mechanism of power that kept them on top. They just never imagined those laws would be used against them. He turned to face Lucius fully. I invoke right of debt claim against the House of Malfoy. 2 life debts, bound in blood, owed to the House of Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell. The magic responded before anyone else could. It came from the floor, from the ancient stones of the Wizengamot chamber that had witnessed 10 centuries of magical law. A pulse of golden light rippled outward from where Harry stood, expanding in a perfect circle. When it reached the walls, runes that hadn't been visible in living memory blazed to life along every surface. The entire chamber hummed with power so old it felt less like magic and more like the turning of the earth. Lucius Malfoy gasped. His left hand, the one without the cane, flew to his chest as if he'd been struck. In the gallery, Draco made a sound like he'd been punched. Narcissa gripped his arm harder, her face gone pale. The magic acknowledges the debt, Marchbank said, and her voice was barely above a whisper. Lord Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell, state your terms. This was the moment. Harry had thought about this for 3 days, lying awake in Grimmauld Place, pacing the study, arguing with Hermione until 2 in the morning. She'd pushed back on every version that was too harsh, too lenient, too vague. They'd fought about it. Ron had mediated with tea and surprisingly sharp tactical input. In the end, Harry had arrived at terms that Hermione called elegant and Ron called absolutely bloody savage. My terms are these, Harry said, and his voice was steady. He was not nervous. He'd faced Voldemort. He'd died and come back. Lucius Malfoy was a bully who'd lost his patron and his power and had nothing left but gold and a name, and Harry was about to take both. First, Lucius Malfoy will make a full, public, uncoerced confession of every crime committed in service to Voldemort. Both wars. Every name, every act, every galleon spent. This will be recorded, witnessed, and entered into the permanent Wizengamot record. Lucius's jaw clenched so hard Harry could see the muscles jumping. His solicitor was clutching parchment like a lifeline. Second, the House of Malfoy will surrender 60% of its liquid vaults to a war reparations fund, to be administered by a committee including representatives of every family that suffered losses. Muggle-born families included. Now Lucius went red. Not embarrassed red, furious red. His knuckles were white on the arms of the defendant's chair. Third, Malfoy Manor and all properties acquired through dark means or with dark gold will be surrendered to the Ministry for repurposing. The family may retain one residence, to be verified clean of dark artifacts by a team of my choosing. You're stripping us, Draco said from the gallery, loud enough to carry. His voice was tight but controlled. You're taking everything. Harry looked up at him. Their eyes met and held. No, Harry said. I'm not. If I wanted to strip you, I'd invoke full servitude. That's what the ancient law allows, Draco. 2 life debts to a triple lord, I could make your family my vassals. I could take your magic. I could take your name. He let that sit in the air for a moment. I'm not doing that. I'm taking your political power. I'm taking the gold your father used to buy this body's compliance for 20 years. And I'm taking the properties where people were tortured and killed. That's not everything. That's consequences. Draco's mouth opened, then closed. Something complicated moved behind his gray eyes. Fourth, Harry continued, turning back to Lucius. And this one's not negotiable, so listen carefully. He took a step closer to the defendant's chair. Then another. Until he was close enough to see the broken blood vessels in Lucius Malfoy's pale eyes, the slight tremor in his hands that hadn't been there before Azkaban. The House of Malfoy will kneel before the House of Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell in this chamber, before these witnesses, and publicly acknowledge the life debts and the debt payment. The kneeling will be recorded. It will be reported. And it will be remembered. I would rather die, Lucius whispered, and for a moment Harry almost believed him. No, you wouldn't, Harry said quietly, for Lucius's ears only. You'd rather do anything than die. That's why you switched sides every time the wind changed. That's why you crawled to Voldemort on your belly, and that's why you gave evidence against your fellow Death Eaters after the First War. You survive, Lucius. It's what you do. So survive this. He stepped back. Raised his voice again. Those are my terms. The magic will enforce them. Refusal means forfeiture, full forfeiture of House Malfoy's magic, titles, and properties to the creditor house. That's me. He spread his hands. Choose. The chamber erupted. Half the Wizengamot was on their feet. Crane was shouting about precedent and appealing to Marchbanks. Several members of the gallery were trying to push forward for a better view. Rita Skeeter's quick quotes quill was writing so fast it was smoking. Through all of it, Harry stood still in the center of the floor with his hands at his sides and waited. Kingsley caught his eye across the chaos. The minister's expression was layered, there was concern there, certainly, but beneath it, Harry saw something else. Relief, maybe. Kingsley had been trying to prosecute Lucius through proper channels for months and had been blocked at every turn by bribes, threats, and procedural manipulation. Harry had just cut through all of it with a blade so old and so sharp that no one could blunt it. Marchbanks banged her gavel, an actual, physical gavel, enchanted to produce a sound like a thunderclap. The chamber fell silent in stages. Order, she said crisply. Lord Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell has invoked ancient law. The magic has acknowledged the debt. The terms have been stated. She looked down at Lucius. Mr. Malfoy. The law is clear. You may accept the terms, or you may refuse and face forfeiture. There is no appeal from a debt claim acknowledged by the Chamber's own magic. You have been told this. Crane leaned in, whispering urgently. Lucius shoved him away. I want time, Lucius said. His voice had regained some of its old silk, but it was frayed at the edges. Surely I'm entitled to consult with my family. You're entitled to nothing, Harry said. You never have been. You just had enough gold to pretend otherwise. Answer now or I take everything. Harry. The voice came from the gallery. Narcissa Malfoy had risen from her seat, one elegant hand resting on the railing. She looked exactly as she had in the forest, composed, beautiful, and absolutely clear-eyed about the situation. May I speak? He should say no. Hermione's voice in his head told him to say no, that Narcissa was the most dangerous Malfoy because she was the smartest. But Harry remembered the forest. The whisper of breath against his face. Is Draco alive? She'd risked everything for her son, and that was a kind of courage Harry respected. Speak, he said. Narcissa descended the gallery stairs with the grace of someone who'd been trained since birth to command attention through movement alone. When she reached the chamber floor, she didn't go to Lucius. She came to stand before Harry, close enough that this was clearly a private conversation made public. You acknowledged my debt, she said softly. The one you owe me. I did. You didn't have to. You could have ignored it, claimed your lordship superseded it, or argued the circumstances negated it. You chose to acknowledge it openly. Her blue eyes searched his face. Why? Because it's true, Harry said. You saved my life. I don't pretend otherwise. Something shifted in Narcissa's expression. My son's debts are my family's debts. I understand this. But I want to understand what you actually want, Harry. Not the political theater. Not the terms. She tilted her head slightly. What do you want? Harry studied her for a long moment. Then he said, low enough that only she could hear, I want it to never happen again. I want the next Voldemort to find no army waiting, no gold ready, no old families eager to kneel. I want the world my friends died for. And your husband is the symbol of everything that prevents it. Narcissa held his gaze for 5 full seconds. Then she turned and walked to Lucius. Harry watched the conversation he couldn't hear. Narcissa's hand on Lucius's shoulder. The way Lucius shook his head violently, then less violently, then went still. Narcissa's lips moving close to his ear. Draco descending from the gallery, drawn by gravity or instinct, joining them. The 3 blonde heads bent together. The chamber waited. The ancient runes still glowed faintly along the walls. Harry could feel the magic of the debt claim like a held breath, patient, inevitable, waiting for its resolution. 2 minutes. 3. 5. Then Lucius Malfoy stood. He straightened his robes with hands that trembled only slightly. He looked at Harry across the chamber floor, and in his grey eyes was something Harry had never seen there before. Not fear, he'd seen Lucius afraid. Not anger, he'd seen that too. This was the look of a man who had finally, after 57 years of privilege and power and manipulation, hit a wall he could not buy, bribe, threaten, or charm his way through. I accept your terms, Lucius said. His voice was flat. Dead. All of them. The magic surged. The golden light pulsed brighter for an instant, and Harry felt the Gryffindor ring grow warm against his finger, acknowledging, binding, sealing. Then kneel, Harry said. It wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. The lordship rings pulsed together as he said it, ruby and emerald and deep violet, and the magic of the debt claim added its weight to the word. This wasn't Harry Potter asking. This was 3 ancient houses commanding, backed by a magical contract older than civilization. Lucius Malfoy's knees buckled. He didn't kneel gracefully. He didn't lower himself with dignity. His legs simply gave way, as if the magic had reached up from the floor and pulled him down. He landed hard on both knees, his cane clattering away across the stone floor, and for one horrible moment his arms pinwheeled as he tried to keep from falling forward onto his face. He caught himself. Barely. Kneeling on the ancient stones of the Wizengamot, his platinum hair falling forward, his hands braced on his thighs, his head bowed. The chamber was so silent Harry could hear the scratch of Skeeter's quill. Narcissa came next. She descended with more control. She'd chosen this, Harry understood. The magic pulled, but she went with it, kneeling with the same elegant composure she brought to everything. Her back was straight, her chin level even as her knees touched stone. She met Harry's eyes as she knelt, and there was no hatred there. Calculation, yes. Pragmatism. But also something like acknowledgement, one survivor recognizing another. Draco. Harry watched him come forward. Watched the war playing out behind Draco's gray eyes, pride, humiliation, fury, and beneath all of it, something that looked almost like exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who'd been carrying his family's poison for 20 years and was only now being forced to set it down. Draco stopped 3 feet from Harry. They were the same height now. When had that happened? Draco's jaw was set, his shoulders rigid, but his eyes were clear. You could have done this without the spectacle, Draco said, low enough for just the two of them. Would your father have confessed without witnesses? Harry asked. Draco's mouth thinned. No. Would the Wizengamot have accepted it without proof? Harry pressed. Draco said nothing. The answer was obvious. I take no pleasure in this, Harry said, and meant it. But I need everyone in this room to see that the old families are not above the old laws. That's the point. Something in Draco's face shifted. Just slightly. A crack in the mask he'd worn since he was 11 years old. You're not the boy I knew at school, he said. I died, Harry said simply. It changes your perspective. Draco Malfoy knelt. He went down on one knee, not both, which was technically his right as the heir rather than the head of house, and bowed his head. His blonde hair fell forward and his fists clenched at his sides, but he knelt. 3 Malfoys. On their knees. Before Harry Potter. In the gallery, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the sound swelled until it was a roar, applause and shouting and people stamping their feet against the wooden gallery floor. Not everyone was clapping. Harry could see the tight faces of certain families, the Knots and the Rolls and the Selwyns, watching with cold calculation, but enough were. Enough that it sounded like victory. Harry raised a hand and the noise died. The debt is acknowledged, he said formally. The terms are accepted. The magic binds. He looked at Marchbanks. Chief Warlock, I request that the confession portion of the terms be scheduled within 7 days. The financial transfers within 30. I'll submit my committee recommendations for the reparations fund by end of week. Marchbanks inclined her head. So noted, Lord Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell. The Wizengamot stands witness. The debt claim is sealed. She banged her gavel once. The matter of the Malfoy criminal trial is hereby rendered moot. Case dismissed by satisfaction of debt. Harry turned and walked toward the chamber doors. Behind him, he heard the rustle of robes as the Malfoys rose from their knees. He didn't look back. He made it to the corridor outside before his hand started shaking. Hermione was waiting in the minister's antechamber, pacing a groove into the carpet. When Harry pushed through the door, she spun on him with wild eyes. Well, she demanded. They knelt, Harry said. He dropped into a chair and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. All 3 of them. Harry. She was beside him in a moment, her hand on his shoulder. Are you alright? He dropped his hands and looked at her. I just forced 3 people to their knees in front of the entire wizarding government. How alright should I be? Hermione pulled a chair close and sat facing him, her knees almost touching his. You gave them a choice. You gave them better terms than anyone in that family has ever given anyone else. Lucius Malfoy would have watched you die in that graveyard and gone home for dinner. I know. Harry flexed his left hand, looking at the 3 rings. They'd gone quiet now, just metal and stone, no glow, no warmth. As if the magic was satisfied and had gone back to sleep. I know that. He shook his head. Draco looked at me like I was becoming his father. You're nothing like Lucius Malfoy, Hermione said firmly. Lucius uses old laws to hurt people and consolidate power, Harry said. What did I just do? Hermione was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you used an old law to get justice for people who were tortured and killed, to strip resources from a family that used those resources for terrorism, and to publicly establish that no family is above consequences. If that's what Lucius does, then the entire legal system is Lucius. Harry laughed despite himself. That's a terrible argument. It's a perfectly good argument, you're just feeling guilty and looking for reasons to. The door banged open. Ron Weasley strode in, his face flushed with excitement, still wearing his Auror trainee robes. Mate. I was watching from the overflow gallery. They set up mirrors for the people who couldn't get seats, and when Lucius hit the floor, Dawlish actually cheered. Dawlish. The man has no emotions and he cheered. Ron, Hermione said warningly. What? It was brilliant. Did you see his face? 20 years of strutting around the ministry like he owned the place, and Ron noticed Harry's expression and slowed down. You all right? He's processing, Hermione said. Right. Processing. Tea, Harry agreed. Ron commandeered the antechamber's small kettle with the ease of someone who'd been managing emotional crises with hot beverages since age 15. While the water boiled, he settled onto the arm of a nearby chair and gave Harry a more careful look. Seriously though, Harry. You did good. You know that, right? My mum's probably already crying about the reparations fund. There are families that lost everything, the Creevies, Ron stopped himself. The Creevies. Colin. They deserve something. They do, Harry said quietly. And you made it happen. Not by killing anyone, not by hurting anyone, by using the system they built. That's poetic justice, that is. Ron poured tea with slightly too much milk, the way he always did. Hermione probably has a fancier word for it. Structural subversion, Hermione supplied. See? Fancy. Harry took the tea and drank. It was too hot and too milky and it was perfect. Nott was watching, he said after a moment. Augustus Nott. He was in the second row and he didn't react at all. Not to the lordships, not to the kneeling, not to any of it. He just watched. Ron and Hermione exchanged a glance. That's the one we need to worry about, Hermione said. He was never charged because he was never marked, but every investigation into dark artifact trafficking in the last decade leads back to the Nott family. He's also got seats on 3 Wizengamot committees, Ron added. Magical law enforcement oversight, goblin liaison, and something else, heritage. Legacy. Magical heritage preservation, Hermione said grimly. The committee that's blocked every Muggleborn rights bill for 40 years. Harry nodded slowly, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. He's going to come at me. Not directly, he's too smart for that. But he'll organize the families I've just terrified. Let him, Ron said with a shrug. You've got 3 lordships and you just made the most powerful dark family in Britain kneel in public. Who's going to ally with Nott against that? People who are scared, Harry said. People who think I'm coming for them next. He looked at Hermione. We need to get ahead of it. I want a meeting with every family that lost someone in the war. I want them to know the reparations fund is real and it's coming. Hermione was already pulling parchment from her bag. I started drafting the committee structure last night. I'm thinking 7 members, 2 from affected families, 2 from the Wizengamot, 1 from Gringotts for financial oversight, 1 Muggleborn representative, and 1 from St. Mungo's to assess ongoing care costs. That's 7 people on a committee, Ron said. They'll take 8 months to agree on what color ink to use. It needs legitimacy, Hermione countered. If Harry just distributes the gold himself, it looks like tyranny, Harry finished. Yeah. I know. Committee it is. He drained his tea and set the mug down. What about the properties? Malfoy Manor, I don't want the ministry sitting on it forever. There must be something useful it can become. Muggleborn Orientation Center, Hermione said immediately, as if she'd been waiting for him to ask. Think about it, every Muggleborn child who gets their Hogwarts letter has nowhere to go for answers. Their parents are confused, they have no context, no community. A proper center with counselors, with books, with introductions to the magical world before they're thrown into Hogwarts cold, in Malfoy Manor, Ron said, and a slow grin spread across his face. Where Hermione was tortured. Where they preached blood purity for generations. He looked at Harry. That's not just justice. That's a statement. Harry found himself smiling for the first time since the chamber. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. A knock at the door. All 3 of them tensed, reflex, left over from a year on the run, but it was only Kingsley's assistant, a young witch named Pervindare who looked slightly odd to be in the same room as all 3 of them. Lord Potter, she said, and the title still sounded strange, Minister Shacklebolt would like a word. At your convenience, she added quickly, as if afraid Harry might take offense at being summoned. I'll come now, Harry said, standing. He looked at Hermione. Start the committee draft. I'll want to review it tonight. Already on it, she said, her quill already scratching. Ron fell into step beside Harry as he followed Pervindare into the corridor. Want backup? It's Kingsley, not a dragon. Kingsley looks like he's been chewing wasps since you walked into that chamber. Might be worse than a dragon. Harry considered. Fair point. Come on. The minister's office was on the top floor of the ministry, reachable by a private lift that Pervindare activated with her wand. As they rose, Harry caught his reflection in the polished brass of the lift doors. He looked different than he had 3 months ago. It wasn't the rings, or the new robes, Hermione had insisted on proper lord's robes, charcoal grey with subtle family crests at the collar, or even the way he held himself. It was his eyes. Something had settled behind them. Some certainty that hadn't been there before the inheritance ritual. Kingsley's office was large but spare, the man had never been one for ostentatious display. He was standing behind his desk when they entered, and didn't sit down. That told Harry everything he needed to know about the tone of this conversation. Ron, give us a moment, Kingsley said. Ron looked at Harry, who nodded. Ron stepped back into the corridor and pulled the door closed. Kingsley studied Harry for a long moment. Then he said, that was either the most brilliant political maneuver this ministry has seen in a century, or the first step toward wizarding Britain's next Dark Lord. Harry didn't flinch. Which do you think it is? I think, Kingsley said slowly, that you've just demonstrated more political power in one afternoon than most ministers accumulate in a full term. I think you've terrified every old family in Britain. I think half the Wizengamot is trying to figure out if they should be your ally or your enemy. And I think you're 18 years old. 19 in 2 months, Harry said mildly. Kingsley didn't smile. Harry. I supported your claim. When you walked in with those rings, I didn't challenge you. When you invoked the debt claim, I didn't intervene. Do you know why? Because you've been trying to prosecute Lucius for 3 months and you can't get it done. Because I've been trying to reform this government for 3 months and I can't get it done, Kingsley corrected. Every bill I propose gets gutted in committee. Every appointment I make gets blocked by the old families. Every investigation gets buried under procedure. You just cut through all of it in 30 minutes. He leaned forward, palms flat on his desk. But that's the problem, Harry. You cut through it because you have power that sits outside my government. Outside democratic accountability. Outside any check or balance. I'm not trying to replace you, Harry said. I know that. But in 6 months? In a year? When you've used these lordships to reshape the Wizengamot, redistribute wealth, strip families of their property, what happens when someone disagrees with you? What happens when you're wrong? Harry was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his robes and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. He'd written it last night, at 3 in the morning, when Hermione's voice in his head wouldn't let him sleep. What is this? Kingsley asked, taking it. Read it. Kingsley unfolded the parchment. His eyes moved across the text, and slowly, very slowly, his expression changed. The tension in his shoulders released by degrees. When he looked up, there was something new in his face. You're proposing to sunset your own lordship powers. In 5 years, Harry said. I claim them, I use them to force through reforms that can't happen any other way, and then I dissolve the hereditary seats, including my own. The Wizengamot becomes fully elected. No more lords, no more inherited power, no more old families buying their way to control. Kingsley set the parchment down carefully. You'd give up this power. I don't want power, Harry said, and it was the truest thing he'd said all day. I want a world where power like this isn't necessary. But right now it is, because the system is rotten and it won't fix itself. So I'll use it. And then I'll end it. Kingsley looked at him for a long time. Then he said, You've grown up. I told you. I died. It changes things. A beat of silence. Then Kingsley extended his hand across the desk. 5 years. You have 5 years to make it work. And if you start going sideways, if you start enjoying the kneeling, I will come for you myself. Harry shook his hand. I'd expect nothing less. Good. Now get out of my office. I have to figure out how to explain to the International Confederation why the boy who lived just became the most powerful lord in Britain. Harry was almost to the door when Kingsley added, Harry. The Knot situation. Harry turned back. Augustus Knot came to see me an hour before the session, Kingsley said. Tried to get the Malfoy case moved to a closed hearing. I denied it. He wasn't happy. He won't be happy about what happened today either. No. He won't. Watch your back. Always do, Harry said, and left. Night fell over London, and Harry sat in the study at Grimmauld Place with the Marauders map spread across the desk, not for Hogwarts, but for the habit of it. The comfort of watching dots move in predictable patterns. He'd sent Hermione home 2 hours ago, her bag stuffed with committee drafts and legal precedents. Ron had gone back to Auror training with a promise to keep his ears open. Kreacher had provided dinner, excellent dinner, because the elf had been in an almost manic state of approval since Harry had claimed the Black family's allegiance through the Peverell line, and now Harry was alone with his thoughts and a glass of fire whiskey he wasn't technically old enough to buy. The Slytherin ring caught the firelight. It was the strangest of the three, where the Gryffindor ring felt warm and the Peverell ring felt heavy, the Slytherin ring felt aware. Not sentient, not like the diary or the locket, but observant. As if it was watching what Harry did with its authority and, judging. A tap at the window. Harry's wand was in his hand before he consciously thought about it, another reflex that would probably never leave, but it was just an owl. A beautiful eagle owl with a cream-colored envelope tied to its leg. Harry let it in. The owl dropped the letter on his desk and left without waiting for a treat or a response, which told Harry something about who'd sent it. The envelope bore the Malfoy crest in black wax. Harry broke the seal. Lord Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell, I write not as Lady Malfoy but as Narcissa Black, whose life debt to you remains unresolved by today's proceedings. You acknowledged my debt publicly. You did not use it against my family, you could have, as a third claim. You chose not to. I understand the significance of this choice, even if others do not. I request a private audience at your earliest convenience. I have information that may interest you regarding parties who were displeased by today's events and are already moving against your interests. I also wish to discuss the matter of my debt to you. You saved me from having to choose between my son and my life. I do not forget this. You are not what I expected. Narcissa Black. Harry read the letter twice. Then he set it down and stared at the fire. Narcissa was reaching out. Either because she was genuinely trying to help, or because she was positioning herself and her family for the new reality, or both. Probably both. She was a Black and a Slytherin, pragmatism was in her blood. The information about parties moving against him, though. That was interesting. That was Narcissa telling him she had intelligence and was willing to share it. Whether out of gratitude, self-interest, or genuine conversion to his cause, did it matter? Harry picked up a quill. Narcissa, tomorrow. Noon. Grimmauld Place, you know where it is. Come alone. Harry he tied the letter to his own owl, a tawny named Swift that he'd gotten after the war, because Hedwig's absence was still an ache he couldn't fill with another Snowy, and sent it into the night. Then he pulled the sunset parchment from his pocket and read it again. 5 years. He'd given himself 5 years to break a system that had stood for a millennium. To remake the wizarding world into something that couldn't produce another Voldemort. 5 years, 3 lordships, and the knowledge that somewhere out there, Augustus Knott was sitting in a dark room, making plans. Harry drained his fire whiskey and went to bed. Tomorrow would be interesting. The next morning came grey and wet, typical London spring, and Harry was up before dawn. Not from nightmares, for once, but from the restless energy of someone who'd set a boulder rolling downhill and knew he couldn't stop it now even if he wanted to. He found Neville Longbottom waiting for him in the kitchen when he came downstairs, which shouldn't have been possible since Grimmauld Place was under Fidelius, except that Harry had made Neville a secret keeper 3 weeks ago. "You're in my kitchen," Harry observed. "Your elf let me in." Neville was sitting at the long table with tea and toast, looking entirely comfortable. He'd grown into himself since the war, still quiet, still unassuming, but there was a solidity to him now that hadn't been there before. The boy who'd killed Nagini with the sword of Gryffindor didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "Neville, it's 6 in the morning. I know. I wanted to catch you before the chaos starts." Neville pushed a second cup of tea across the table. "I was at the session yesterday. Watched the whole thing from the Longbottom seat." Harry sat down and took the tea. And I want in." Harry looked at him over the rim of his cup. Neville's round face was calm and certain. "Lord Longbottom," Neville said, and it wasn't a question. "My gran held the seat while I was underage, but I turned 17 during the war and I never formally claimed it. I went to Gringotts last night. The ring accepted me." He held up his right hand, where a gold band with a rearing lion sat on his index finger. "House Longbottom stands with House Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell. Publicly. Formally. If you'll have me." Harry felt something loosen in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he'd been bracing for his friends to think he'd gone too far, to look at him differently, the way Draco had looked at him in the chamber. "You're not the boy I knew at school." But here was Neville. Steady, dependable Neville. Offering alliance without hesitation. "You know what you're signing up for," Harry said. "Not's going to come for everyone who stands with me. It won't be comfortable." Neville smiled, and there was an edge to it that reminded Harry viscerally of the boy who'd stood in front of Voldemort's entire army with a burning hat on his head and pulled a sword out of it. Harry, I spent 7th year being tortured by the Carrows while running an insurgency out of the Room of Requirement. I think I can handle Augustus not. Harry extended his hand. Neville shook it, firm, sure, and the Gryffindor ring pulsed once with warmth. Acknowledgement. Alliance. Right, Harry said. Then let me tell you about Narcissa's letter. They talked through breakfast and into the morning, plotting like they'd never plotted before. Neville had a mind for strategy that most people never saw because he packaged it in self-deprecation and quiet observation. By 9 o'clock, they had the outlines of a plan, which families to approach first, which Wizengamot votes were coming up that they could influence, how to frame Harry's reforms as restoration rather than revolution. People don't like change, Neville said, spreading marmalade on his 4th piece of toast. But they like the idea of going back to something good. If you frame it as reclaiming the founder's intent, Gryffindor's bravery, Slytherin's cunning used for Britain rather than against it, you make it harder for not to cast you as a radical. Hermione said something similar. She used more syllables. Neville grinned. I'm a simpler man. Gran always said, keep it plain and keep it moving. At 11:30, Neville left through the flue to attend his first Wizengamot committee meeting as Lord Longbottom, and Harry began preparing for Narcissa. He didn't fuss, didn't rearrange furniture or hide dark artifacts or any of the things Creature suggested. He simply cleared the study, set out 2 chairs facing each other with a small table between them, and waited. At noon exactly, because of course she was exactly on time, the doorbell rang. Narcissa Malfoy stood on the doorstep of number 12, Grimmauld Place in a dark blue traveling cloak with her blonde hair pulled back severely. Without the usual Malfoy ostentation, she looked younger. Sharper. More like Andromeda, actually, which Harry suspected she would not appreciate hearing. Come in, Harry said. She crossed the threshold and paused in the hallway, looking around with unreadable eyes. I haven't been in this house since I was 16, she said. Sirius was still here then. And Regulus. A pause. It was a different place. It's a different place now, Harry agreed. Studies through here. He led her in and closed the door. They sat in the 2 chairs, facing each other across the small table. Creature appeared with tea, better china than Harry had ever seen him use, and vanished again. Narcissa poured. Her hands were steady, her movements precise. She wore no rings except a thin silver band on her right hand, not the Malfoy crest. The black family ring. She'd chosen her accessories carefully, Harry noted. She was coming to him as a black, not a Malfoy. Thank you for seeing me, she said. You said you had information. A slight curve of her lips, not quite a smile. Direct. Good. I'll match you. She set her teacup down. Augustus not contacted my husband last night. By flew, within 2 hours of our return home. He's calling a meeting, the families he considers reliable. Not, Rowell, Selwyn, Parkinson, Flint. Others. I don't know the full list. And Lucius? Is considering it. Narcissa's voice was flat. My husband is a fool in many ways, but he is a proud fool, and yesterday's humiliation is festering. I gave him terms that let him keep his magic, his name, and his family intact, Harry said. That's not humiliation. That's mercy. I agree. He does not. She lifted her chin. Which is why I'm here and he isn't. Lucius sees yesterday as a defeat. I see it as a renegotiation of terms. The old arrangement, pureblood supremacy, Malfoy gold buying Malfoy power, was always going to end. Better it ends with you than with someone less, principled. Harry studied her. You're remarkably calm for a woman whose family just lost half their fortune and their ancestral home. I'm a black, Narcissa said simply. We survive. And we position ourselves. She met his eyes directly. I will give you everything I learn about Not's coalition. I will feed you their plans, their alliances, their weaknesses. I know these people, I've sat at their tables for 30 years. In exchange for what? My son. No hesitation. No calculation in the word, just a mother's bare, unvarnished priority. Draco has served his debt. He knelt. But he's 20 years old and he has nothing now, no fortune, no political future, no path forward. The Malfoy name is poison. What do you want me to do about it? Narcissa leaned forward slightly. Give him one. A path. Not charity, he wouldn't accept it and I wouldn't ask. But opportunity. Let him prove himself useful to your cause. Let him work for something real, something that isn't built on his father's gold or his father's name. Harry thought about that. About Draco on his knees in the chamber, that exhaustion in his eyes. About the boy on the astronomy tower who couldn't kill Dumbledore. About the young man who hadn't identified Harry at the manor, who'd thrown him a wand during the final battle. Draco Malfoy was not a good person, not yet. But he wasn't his father either. I'll think about it, Harry said. That's all I ask. Narcissa picked up her tea again, and the slight relaxation of her shoulders told Harry she'd expected to be refused outright. Now. About Not's meeting, it's scheduled for this Friday. At the Knot estate in Wiltshire. I'll have specifics by Thursday. Send them to me directly. Not by Family Owl, use a hired bird. Naturally. She sipped her tea. Then, with a delicacy that was clearly studied, she said, May I ask you something personal? You can ask. Yesterday, in the chamber. When you told Lucius to kneel. Did you enjoy it? Harry met her eyes. No. Truly. I felt sick, Harry said honestly. But I'd do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. However many times it takes until the people in power understand that they are not gods and the rest of us are not their servants. Narcissa set down her teacup with a soft clink. Sirius would have loved you, she said quietly. He was a fool and a hothead but he believed in the same things. Tearing it all down and building something better. She stood, pulling her cloak around her shoulders. I should go. Lucius will notice my absence. Harry walked her to the door. On the threshold, she turned back. Harry. One more thing. Her blue eyes were serious. The Slytherin Lordship. You claimed it by right of conquest, by defeating Voldemort, who was Slytherin's last heir by blood. Yes. The other families know this. But what they don't know, what I know, because my family kept records, is that the Slytherin Lordship carries more than a title and a seat. It carries authority over Slytherin's legacies. His properties. His creatures. She paused meaningfully. His school. Harry went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying that Hogwarts was founded by 4. And you now hold the right of 2 of them. She smiled, a real smile, sharp and dangerous and almost warm. I suspect Minerva McGonagall is going to have a very interesting week. She turned and walked down the steps into the grey London morning, and Harry stood in the doorway watching her go, the Slytherin ring pulsing on his hand like a second heartbeat. 2 of 4. He closed the door slowly, his mind racing. 2 of 4 founders. Gryffindor and Slytherin. The sword and the serpent. If the Lordships carried authority over Hogwarts itself, over who taught there, what was taught, how students were selected and sorted and shaped, Harry looked down at his rings. Ruby and emerald, side by side. What have I gotten myself into, he murmured. From somewhere in the house, Creature's voice drifted, greatness, Master Harry. You have gotten yourself into greatness. Harry laughed despite himself, shook his head, and went back to the study. He had letters to write, allies to gather, and a world to remake. The boulder was rolling. Time to make sure it crushed the right things. By Thursday, the Daily Prophet had printed 14 articles about what they were calling the Kneeling, a name that Harry hated and the public loved. Half the coverage was breathlessly supportive, justice at last, Lord Potter holds Malfoy accountable. The other half was pearl-clutching anxiety, ancient lordships invoked, how much power is too much. Harry didn't care about the Prophet. He cared about the letter that arrived Thursday evening by anonymous hired owl, written in Narcissa's elegant hand on unmarked parchment. Friday. 9 p.m. Knot Estate, East Wing Study. Confirmed attendees, Augustus Knot, Corban Yaxley, released from Azkaban on health grounds last month. Were you aware? Thorfinn Rowell, head of House Selwyn, Marcus, not the father, he died at the battle, Edgar Parkinson, and Lucius. They're calling it a heritage preservation discussion. They're going to discuss you. One more thing, Knot has been in contact with someone at Gringotts. I don't know who. But the goblins are involved somehow. Burn this. Harry didn't burn it. He copied the information and then burned it. Yaxley, he said to Ron and Hermione, who were sprawled across the grim old place sitting room going through financial records. Yaxley's out of Azkaban. Ron's head snapped up. What? Since when? Last month, apparently. Health grounds. Health grounds my arse, Ron said viciously. He imperused pious thickness. He hunted muggleborns. Ron stopped, because the memory of Yaxley grabbing Hermione during their escape from the ministry was something none of them liked to revisit. I'll find out who authorized it, Hermione said, her voice gone cold in the way that meant someone was going to regret their life choices. Health grounds releases require 3 signatures, the Azkaban warden, a healer, and a Wizengamot member. 10 Galleons says the Wizengamot signature is from the Heritage Preservation Committee, Harry said. No bet, Hermione and Ron said in unison. Harry stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkening square. Friday. Tomorrow night, the old guard would sit in Knot's study and plot against him. They'd scheme and threaten and plan, and they'd think they were operating in shadow. They didn't know about Narcissa. They didn't know Harry already had their names, their meeting time, their location. And they didn't know what the Slytherin Lordship really meant. What it could really do. Harry touched the emerald ring on his finger. It pulsed once, warm and knowing. Let them meet, he said to the window. Let them plot. They're playing a game whose rules I wrote 300 years before any of them were born. Harry, Hermione said carefully, you didn't write those rules. He turned back to her with a grin, the reckless one, the one she'd been seeing since first year, the one that usually preceded something either brilliant or insane. Didn't I? I'm Lord Slytherin now. His rules are my rules. His legacy is my legacy. He spread his hands. And I'm just getting started. Ron looked at Hermione. Hermione looked at Ron. We're going to need more tea, Ron said. Chapter 3, The Old Serpent's Game. Friday evening came with a cold wind that rattled the windows of Grimmauld Place and made the old house groan in its bones. Harry stood in the study with the Marauders map spread on the desk, useless for anything practical right now, but the habit of looking at it before action was ingrained deep enough to be ritual. You're not actually going to the Knot Estate, Hermione said from the doorway. It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a statement either. There was a sliver of uncertainty in it, because this was Harry, and Harry had a long history of doing exactly the stupid brave thing everyone told him not to do. No, Harry said, rolling up the map. I don't need to be there. I need them to meet. I need them to commit to whatever they're planning. And then I need to be 3 steps ahead when they try to execute it. Hermione exhaled. Good. Because walking into a room with 6 former Death Eaters would be something I'd have done at 15, Harry finished. I know. I'm not 15 anymore. She came into the study and perched on the arm of his chair. So what are you doing instead? I'm going to Hogwarts. Hermione blinked. Then her eyes went to the Slytherin ring. The Lordship authority. Over the school. Narcissa said the Lordships carry authority over the founders' legacies. Properties. Creatures. He turned his hand, watching the emerald catch the lamplight. I need to know what that means. Practically. Not theoretically, I need to know what I can actually do. And the only place to find that out is the castle itself. McGonagall isn't going to like this. Harry smiled crookedly. McGonagall doesn't like most things I do. She still helped me become an animagus when I was 14. He stood, pocketing his wand. I'll be back by morning. If anything comes from Narcissa about the meeting, I'll send a Patronus immediately. Hermione caught his arm as he moved past her. Harry. Be careful with this. The Founder's magic is old. Really old. Pre-ministry, pre-statute of secrecy old. We don't fully understand how it works. I know. He covered her hand with his briefly. That's why I'm going to ask the castle. He disapparated from the front step with a sharp crack, the compression of space folding around him like a fist, and reappeared at the Hogsmeade boundary a heartbeat later. The village was quiet, a few lights in pub windows, the distant sound of someone's wireless playing through an open door. Harry didn't pause. He walked straight up the path toward the castle gates, and as he approached, the great iron gates swung open without being touched. He stopped. The gates had never done that before. Not for Dumbledore, not for anyone. They required a wand tap and the headmaster's authorization to open from outside. But they'd opened for him. The Gryffindor ring was warm. The Slytherin ring was singing, not audibly, but a vibration in his bones, a hum that felt like homecoming and ownership and something ancient recognizing something it had been waiting for. Harry walked through the gates, and Hogwarts welcomed him. The path to the castle was dark under a half-moon, but Harry could feel the grounds responding to his presence in ways he'd never noticed before. The grass seemed to lean toward him as he passed. The whomping willow, visible in the distance, went utterly still. In the lake, something enormous surfaced briefly, the giant squid, or something older, before sliding back beneath the black water. The front doors opened as he reached them. Just like the gates. No touch, no password. Just open. Harry stepped into the entrance hall and stopped again, because Minerva McGonagall was standing at the foot of the grand staircase in a tartan dressing gown with her hair in a long braid and an expression that could have stripped paint off a broomstick. The wards alerted me, she said crisply. That a Founder's heir had crossed the boundary. I assumed it was you, since the last Slytherin heir is dead and the Gryffindor line hasn't been active in 5 centuries. She descended the last 3 steps. Would you like to explain, Potter, why my castle just let you in like you own the place? Because I sort of do, Harry said. And I'm sorry. I should have written ahead. But I need answers tonight and I didn't think a letter would, no. A letter would not have sufficed for this conversation. McGonagall's eyes dropped to his left hand, where the rings glowed faintly in the torchlight of the entrance hall. I read the prophet. I watched the Wizengamot proceedings through Filius's pensieve, he was in the gallery. She straightened her spine, which didn't seem physically possible given how straight it already was. You claimed Gryffindor's lordship. Yes. And Slytherin's. By right of conquest. And now you're here because you've learned, or been told, that those lordships carry authority over this school. Yes. McGonagall looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, come to my office. We need tea and we need the portraits. She turned and swept up the staircase without looking back, apparently confident that he'd follow. He did. The castle seemed to shift around them as they walked, corridors shorter than Harry remembered, staircases arriving exactly when needed, doors opening at the right moment. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The castle was making their path easier. It's been doing that since I became headmistress, McGonagall said, noticing his attention. But not to this degree. Not, she gestured at a door that had swung open ahead of them, this eagerly. They reached the headmaster's office. The gargoyle leapt aside before McGonagall even opened her mouth, and Harry could have sworn it bowed. Inside, the office was much as Harry remembered, circular, filled with delicate instruments, lined with portraits of former headmasters. Dumbledore's portrait was awake, watching Harry enter with those painted blue eyes that held too much intelligence for oil and canvas. "Harry," Dumbledore's portrait said warmly. "I wondered when you'd come." "You knew about this," Harry said. "It wasn't a question. I suspected. The Peverell line was always clear, the Hallows confirmed it. The Gryffindor connection through the Potters was documented but unconfirmed. And the Slytherin claim." The painted eyes twinkled. "Well. That required you to do what you did. Defeat the heir by blood. I could not guarantee it. But you planned for it." A gentle smile. "I prepared for many possibilities." "Albus," McGonagall said sharply, "if you knew this boy might end up with authority over this school, you might have mentioned it at any point in the last 30 years. Would it have changed anything, Minerva?" Before Tom was defeated, the claims were academic. After, well. After, it was Harry's choice to make. McGonagall made a sound that suggested she had many things to say about this and was choosing to say none of them. She poured tea from a pot that appeared on her desk without being summoned, the castle providing again, and handed Harry a cup. "Right," she said, sitting behind her desk. "Let's discuss what this actually means. Because I'll tell you plainly, Potter, if you've come here to take my school, I haven't," Harry said quickly. "I have no interest in running Hogwarts. You're the best headmistress this place could have and I wouldn't change that." Some of the steel left McGonagall's spine. "Not all of it." "Then what do you want?" Harry sat down across from her and thought about how to say this. "I want to know what the Lordships let me do. What rights I actually have. Because other people are going to figure this out, Narcissa Malfoy already has, and if she knows, others will too. Augustus Knott is meeting with a coalition of old families tonight to plan how to fight me, and if they realize I have authority over Hogwarts, they'll use that. They'll frame me as trying to seize the school, control the children, build an army." "Are you?" McGonagall asked bluntly. "Minerva." Harry met her eyes directly. "I am not Voldemort. I know that." She softened, just fractionally. "But you understand why I have to ask." "I do. And I respect it. That's why I'm here talking to you instead of just doing whatever the rings let me do." "From his portrait," Dumbledore said, "perhaps I can illuminate. The Founder's authority over Hogwarts is not what modern wizards tend to imagine. It is not ownership in the way one owns a house. The Founders built this castle and imbued it with their magic, their intentions, their values, their vision for what magical education should be. The Lordship rings carry those intentions. They allow the bearer to communicate with the castle. To access areas and magics that are otherwise sealed. To influence, not control." "Influence how?" Harry asked. "The wards, for instance," Dumbledore said. "Hogwarts wards have 4 layers, one for each founder. As Gryffindor's heir, you can access and modify the Gryffindor ward layer. As Slytherin's heir by conquest, you can access his. That's half the castle's protective magic." Harry stared. "I can modify the wards." "Not alone. The castle itself has preferences. Intentions that have built up over 1,000 years of students and teachers and magic layered upon magic. You can work with it, not against it." "The Chamber of Secrets," Harry said suddenly. "That's Slytherin's legacy." "Yes. And what's in it now?" "The basilisk is dead," McGonagall said. "You killed it." The chamber itself was sealed after the war. Unsealed, Harry said. The word came out without conscious thought, and both rings pulsed, the Slytherin one with particular intensity. He felt something shift in the castle, deep below. A lock turning. A door opening in a place far underground. McGonagall's teacup rattled in its saucer. "What did you just—" "I can feel it," Harry said, and he could. The chamber. Not the memory of it, not the 12-year-old's terror and the bloody fong in his arm, but the reality of it. A vast space beneath the castle. Old. Powerful. Full of magic that had been sealed and sleeping and was now waking up because its master had come home. "There's more down there than a dead snake," Harry murmured, half to himself. Slytherin's library. His workrooms. He shook his head, blinking. The knowledge was coming in fragments, impressions from the ring, like memories that belonged to someone else. He built more than a hiding place for a monster. That was Riddle's use of it, not Slytherin's intent. "Harry." McGonagall's voice was careful, controlled. "What are you seeing?" "Not seeing. Feeling. The ring it's like it's giving me a map." Slytherin built the chamber as a research space. Potions, ward crafting, magical theory. The basilisk was a guardian, not a weapon. And there are books down there. Hundreds of years of books that have been sealed since Slytherin left the castle. He looked at McGonagall. "I'm going to open it properly. Make it accessible. There's 1,000 years of magical knowledge down there that's been lost because the last person to access it was a teenager who only cared about a snake." McGonagall stared at him for a long time. Then she said, "You continue to be the most extraordinary and infuriating student I have ever taught." "That's a yes." "That is I want to be present when you open it. I want a full inventory of everything found, and if there is anything dark or dangerous it will be sealed by me personally until we determine it's safe." "Done." And Harry, she fixed him with the look that had terrified him as an 11-year-old and still commanded respect at 19. "This does not give you authority over my curriculum, my staff appointments, or my students. If you try to use these lordships to interfere with the actual running of this school, you'll transfigure me into a footstool." "I know." Harry grinned at her. "I don't want to run your school, Minerva. I want to protect it. There are people who would use Hogwarts as a political weapon, who have used it, under Umbridge, under the Carrows. The Founder's authority means I can ward this place so that never happens again. No ministry appointee, no political faction, no one can override the school's independence." McGonagall's expression changed. For the first time, he saw what this meant to her, a woman who'd watched her school be co-opted twice in 3 years, who'd watched students tortured in the corridors she'd sworn to protect. If Harry could ward Hogwarts against political interference, truly ward it, with Founder's magic, do it, she said. "Tonight, if you can." "The ward work." "Not tonight. I need to study what's already there, what each layer does. And I'll need access to Gryffindor's legacy too, whatever that is." Dumbledore's portrait coughed delicately. "The Gryffindor legacy within the castle is primarily the come-and-go room, what students call the room of requirement. It was Gryffindor's creation, designed to serve the castle's inhabitants in their time of need. The sword is another piece, though it has already chosen you." "The room of requirement burned," Harry said. "Fiend fire." "The room's contents burned," Dumbledore corrected gently. "The room itself is Founder magic. Fire cannot destroy it. It may be, recovering. Healing. Regrowing, if you will. But a Gryffindor heir might accelerate that process." Harry nodded slowly. His mind was racing, the chamber below, the room above, the ward layers surrounding everything. 2 of 4 Founders' legacies under his authority. The castle itself responding to him like a living thing. He understood now why Narcissa had told him. This wasn't just political power, titles and seats and gold. This was magical power. structural power. The kind that couldn't be bought or legislated away. And it terrified the old families because they couldn't touch it. "I'll come back tomorrow," Harry said, standing. "With Hermione, she'll want to document everything. We'll start with the chamber and work up." "I'll clear my afternoon," McGonagall said, rising to walk him out. At the door, she paused. "Harry. I want to say, what you did in the Wizengamot. The Malfoy business." He waited. "I taught that boy for 6 years," she said quietly. "Draco. I watched him arrive arrogant and leave broken. I watched his father use gold and threats to shield him from every consequence, which meant he never learned, never grew, never had the chance to become anything but what Lucius made him." She met Harry's eyes. "What you did, making them kneel, stripping their power, some will call it cruel. But it might be the first honest thing that's happened to that family in generations." "Narcissa asked me to give Draco a path forward," Harry said. "And will you?" Harry thought about it. "Maybe. If he earns it." "Good." McGonagall opened the door. "Now get out of my castle. Some of us have a school to run in the morning." Harry walked back through corridors that lit up as he approached and went dark behind him. The castle was showing off. He could feel its pleasure, old magic delighted to have its master back, like a dog greeting an owner who'd been gone too long. At the entrance hall, he paused. The Slytherin ring pulsed. Below his feet, far below, the chamber waited. Tomorrow, Harry told the castle. Or the ring. Or both. Tomorrow. He walked into the night and disapparated home. Grimmauld Place was not empty when he returned. Ron was asleep on the sitting room couch with an Auror training manual open on his chest, but Hermione was wide awake at the kitchen table, surrounded by parchment and books and the remains of what looked like a very intense research session. Narcissa's report came, she said without looking up. The meeting happened. 6 attendees, confirmed. 3 hours. She got a summary from Lucius afterward. He came home drunk and talked. Harry dropped into the chair across from her. And? Now Hermione looked up, and her face was tight with the particular expression she wore when she was angry and trying to be analytical about it. "They're going to challenge your Slytherin lordship. In the Wizengamot. They're going to argue that right of conquest doesn't apply because Voldemort was never a recognized Lord Slytherin, he never claimed the title formally, so there was no title to win." Harry's stomach dropped. "Can that work? Legally? It's thin. The precedent is clear that right of conquest transfers regardless of whether the previous holder formally claimed." Hermione shuffled through her parchment. "But legally thin doesn't matter if you have enough Wizengamot votes to pass a motion, and not thinks he can get them. How many does he need? Simple majority for a formal challenge to a lordship claim. That's 34 votes out of 67 seated members." Hermione pulled out a list. "I've been counting. We have maybe 20 solid, people who support you or who are too afraid to move against you after the Malfoy spectacle. Not has maybe 15 hardliners. That leaves 32 members who could go either way. So it comes down to the undecideds. It comes down to the undecideds." Hermione's jaw tightened. "And here's the other thing. The Gringotts connection Narcissa mentioned. I think I know what it is. Not's going to argue that the inheritance ritual was improperly conducted, that the goblins who performed it had a conflict of interest because of the break-in during the war. That's about you and me and Ron," Harry said slowly. "The Gringotts break-in. He's going to say the goblins who gave me the lordships did it as revenge against the bank. That it's not legitimate. That's the theory, yes." Hermione's voice was tight. "It won't hold up if the goblins stand behind the ritual. But if Not has contacts inside Gringotts who'll testify that the ritual was irregular, then it becomes my word against theirs." Harry stood and paced to the window. "Ironclaw. The goblin who told me about the lordships, who performed the ritual. He was dying. His own people were suspicious of him, he said as much. If Knots Gringotts' contact claims Ironclaw was acting outside his authority, it muddies the water enough for a challenge to gain traction. Hermione stood too, coming to stand beside him. Harry, we need to get ahead of this. We need the goblins on our side, or at least neutral. Ragnarok, Harry said. The director. I need to meet with him directly. Harry, the goblins hate you. We broke into their bank, stole from a vault, destroyed half their lobby, and escaped on a dragon. Which is why they'll respect me, Harry said. Goblins don't respect politeness. They respect power and audacity. We did something no one had done in 700 years. Hermione made a frustrated sound. That's not how diplomacy, it's how goblin diplomacy works. Bill told me. The Weasley who actually works there. Harry turned from the window. I'll go Monday morning. Before Nott can make his move. And if they won't see you? Harry held up his left hand. The Peverell ring caught the dim kitchen light, deep violet, almost black, with a symbol carved into it that Harry had come to recognize as the Deathly Hallows mark. The Peverells dealt with goblins. Extensively. The resurrection stone was crafted by a goblin. The Elder Wand has goblin silver inlaid in the handle. The relationship between my house and theirs goes back to the origins of both. He lowered his hand. They'll see me. Hermione looked unconvinced but didn't argue further. She knew the look on his face, the one that meant his mind was made up and arguing would only waste energy she could spend on research. Fine. Monday. Gringotts. She gathered her parchment into a neat stack. But between now and then, I'm going to build you a legal defense so airtight that Knott's challenge dies before it reaches a vote. If we can get the challenge dismissed on procedural grounds, do it. Harry looked at the clock on the wall. Past midnight. Go home. Sleep. I need you sharp. I need me sharp. She packed her bag and paused at the kitchen door. Harry. The thing with Hogwarts. The Founder's authority. Whatever you learn tonight, don't tell anyone yet. Not until we understand it fully. Why? Because right now Nott thinks your power is political. Seats and gold and debts. If he realizes you have structural power over Hogwarts, over the oldest magical institution in Britain, he won't just challenge your lordship. He'll try to destroy you. Harry nodded. She was right. She was usually right. Between us and Neville. That's it. Hermione left. Harry stood alone in the kitchen of the ancient black house, listening to Ron snore in the next room, and thought about what he was building and what could be destroyed. He went to bed. He did not dream. Saturday morning brought three things: a howler from someone named Ernestine Bulstrode calling him a tyrant and a blood traitor. It exploded in the kitchen and frightened Creature, a formal summons to appear before the Wizengamot's Committee on Magical Heritage Preservation, Knott's committee, already moving, and a handwritten note from Draco Malfoy. The note was brief. No preamble, no pleasantries. Potter. We need to talk. Not about the debt or the kneeling or any of it. About something else. Something you need to know that my mother won't tell you because she doesn't know. The Three Broomsticks. Tonight. 8 o'clock. Come alone or don't come at all. DM. Harry read it 3 times. Then he read it a 4th time, looking for any trace of deception, any hint of a trap. The handwriting was tight, controlled, not the loose scrawl of someone writing under duress or the overly neat script of someone trying too hard. Could be a trap, Ron said from the doorway, because of course Ron had read it over his shoulder. Could be. Going anyway? Harry looked at him. Ron shrugged. Course you are. Want me to be nearby? I can sit in the pub, keep my ears open, he said alone. He said alone or don't come at all. He didn't say he'd check. Ron grinned. I'll be under the cloak. You won't even know I'm there. Ron, you barely fit under the cloak when we were 13. You're 6'2" now. I'll hunch. Harry laughed. Fine. Hunching back up. Bring your wand and don't order the mead, you talk too loud after mead. They spent the day productively. Hermione arrived by 10 with a legal brief that was already 15 pages long and growing, and they worked through the Heritage Preservation Committee summons together. It was transparently a power play. The committee had no authority to actually compel a lord to appear, but ignoring it would look dismissive to the undecided Wizengamot members. Go, Hermione decided after 2 hours of debate. Go, but go as all 3 lords. Full regalia. Make them feel small in their own committee room. I don't have regalia, Harry said. Hermione gave him a look that said she'd already thought of this and opened a second bag, one Harry hadn't noticed her carrying, and pulled out a folded set of formal robes. Black, with crimson and emerald and deep violet threading through the weave in patterns that shifted when you looked at them directly. The Potter crest at the throat, flanked by the Gryffindor lion and the Slytherin serpent, with the Peverell triangle behind them all. When did you? Tuesday. I found a tailor in Diagon Alley who specializes in heritage garments. She was thrilled. Apparently no one's commissioned triple lordship regalia in living memory. Hermione, I can't wear this. I'll look like a lord. Yes. That's the point. She thrust the robes at him. The committee hearing is Monday afternoon. The same day you're going to Gringotts in the morning. You'll go to the bank first, establish goblin support, or at least neutrality, and then walk into Knott's committee looking like every inch of what you are. 3 houses. 3 legacies. 1,000 years of magical authority. Harry held the robes up. They were beautiful, he had to admit. Not ostentatious, Hermione knew his taste better than that, but unmistakably powerful. The kind of garment that made a statement just by existing. Fine, he said. But if anyone calls me, my lord, to my face, I'm hexing them. You are a lord. 3 times over. Doesn't mean I want to hear it in that tone. They worked until 6, when Harry went upstairs to prepare for his meeting with Draco. He changed into plain dark robes, nothing lordly, nothing political. If Draco had something to tell him, something his mother didn't know, Harry wanted to hear it without the weight of titles between them. He apparat to Hogsmeade at 7:45 and walked to the 3 Broomsticks through a light drizzle. The pub was moderately busy for a Saturday night, locals mostly, with a few Hogwarts staff unwinding at corner tables. Harry noticed Professor Flitwick with a glass of sherry and Madame Hooch arguing animatedly with someone about the Holyhead Harpy's new seeker. Draco was already there. Back corner booth, facing the door, smart placement, clear sight lines. He had a glass of something amber in front of him that he wasn't drinking. When Harry slid into the opposite seat, Draco's gray eyes tracked him with the alert wariness of a man who hadn't fully decided whether this was a good idea. You came alone, Draco said. You asked me to. Harry didn't look toward the bar, where Ron was presumably hunched under the invisibility cloak and trying not to knock things over. Drink? Whatever you're having. Draco signaled Rosmerta, who brought a second glass of what turned out to be aged Ogdens, the expensive kind. Harry took a sip and waited. Draco stared at his glass for a long moment. Then he said, My father is going to betray you. I know. Knott's coalition. Your mother told me. Draco's jaw tightened. Of course she did. He stopped himself. Fine. But that's not what I'm here about. My mother knows about the politics. She doesn't know about the magic. Harry went still. What magic? Draco drained his glass in one long swallow. Set it down. Met Harry's eyes. My father kept things in the manor. Even after the ministry raids, he had hiding places they never found. Most of it was dark artifacts, cursed objects, the usual pureblood detritus. Draco's voice was low, controlled, but there was something underneath it, fear, maybe, or disgust. But there was one thing that wasn't an artifact. It was a ritual. A piece of parchment, very old, locked in a compartment behind the study's false wall. I found it when I was 15. I read it. I shouldn't have. What ritual? A lordship breaking. Draco's eyes were intent on Harry's. Old magic. Pre-Hogwarts old. It requires components. Specific ones. And time to prepare. But if performed correctly, it severs a lordship claim. Not challenges it legally, severs it. Magically. Permanently. Harry's blood went cold. Not has this. My father gave it to him. 2 days ago. Draco's hand was white-knuckled on his empty glass. I overheard them in the flue. My father doesn't know I was listening. He thinks I'm broken. Compliant. That the kneeling took everything out of me. A flash of something bitter crossed his face. He's wrong. Why are you telling me this? Draco was quiet for a moment. Then, because you could have taken everything. You said it yourself in the chamber, full servitude, my magic, my name. The ancient law gave you the right. And you didn't. He looked away, toward the rain-streaked window. I've been thinking about why. At first I thought it was weakness. That you were too Gryffindor to take what you'd won. But it isn't that, is it? No. You left me something. Deliberately. A life, a name, diminished, yes, but mine. You left me a choice. Draco turned back. So this is my choice. I'm choosing not to be my father. Harry studied him across the table. The sharp angles of Draco's face, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't an act. Harry had seen Draco act, the sneering performance of school-age cruelty, and this wasn't it. This was a man at a crossroads, making a decision in real time. The ritual, Harry said. What does it require? Blood of the Lord being targeted. Willingly given or taken by force. A site of power connected to the lordship. And a caster of the same bloodline as the original lord, or someone bound by magical conquest to the same line. Harry's mind raced. Blood of the Lord, that's my blood. A site of power, that could be Hogwarts. And a caster of the same bloodline, for Slytherin, that would be. He stopped. There are no more Slytherin descendants. None by blood, Draco said carefully. But conquest creates a magical bond. If not can find someone who was bound to Voldemort by magical oath, someone whose dark mark created a link to Slytherin's blood through Voldemort, any living Death Eater, Harry breathed. The dark mark was a magical bond. If that constitutes a conquest link to Slytherin's line, then any marked Death Eater could serve as the caster. Draco nodded grimly. Yaxley. Raoul. My father. His voice dropped. My father, who has already given not the ritual and who bears the mark and who has reason to want your Slytherin lordship destroyed. Harry leaned back in the booth, his mind working furiously. They need my blood. Yes. And access to a site of power connected to the lordship. The Chamber of Secrets would be the obvious choice. Or Slytherin's seat in the Wizengamot, the actual stone chair has been there 1,000 years. The chambers under Hogwarts. Under my control. Harry's eyes narrowed. But the Wizengamot seat, that's public. Accessible. That's why the committee hearing matters, Draco said. Monday. They're going to get you in that room, in proximity to the Slytherin seat, and find a way to get your blood. How? It's a committee hearing. They can't exactly stab me. Draco laughed, short, humorless. You don't know pure-blood politics. A handshake with a pin-charmed ring. A blood quill slipped into the committee documents. A paper cut on parchment that's been pre-enchanted to absorb and store blood. His lip curled. These are people who've been stealing blood for rituals since the Middle Ages. They have methods. Harry thought about this. About walking into a committee room where people wanted to steal his blood for a ritual that could strip his power. About the 12 different ways they might try it and how he'd have to be vigilant about every surface, every contact, every seemingly innocent interaction. Or I could just not give them the chance, Harry said slowly. A different plan was forming. Not defensive. Not reactive. I could walk in there and make it very clear that touching me, in any way, for any reason, would be the last mistake they ever made. Draco raised an eyebrow. And how would you do that? Harry smiled. It was not a kind smile. By showing them what 3 lordships actually mean. Not the political power. Not the seats and the gold. The magic. What magic? I went to Hogwarts tonight, Harry said. The castle opened for me. The wards recognized me. I could feel the Founder's power responding, not metaphorically, Draco. I could feel it. The Slytherin ring gave me access to 1,000 years of sealed knowledge. The Gryffindor ring connects me to the room of requirement. He leaned forward. Imagine what happens when I walk into that committee room and the Slytherin seat, that 1,000-year-old stone chair that hasn't recognized a master in 5 centuries, lights up for me. Draco stared at him. Then, very slowly, he started to laugh. A real laugh, startled, almost incredulous. You mad bastard, he said. You're not going to defend against them. You're going to terrify them into inaction. Fear is temporary, Harry said. But spectacle creates narrative. And narrative shapes politics. If every person in that room sees the Slytherin seat except me, visibly, magically, undeniably, then Not's challenge becomes absurd. You can't argue I'm not the legitimate Lord Slytherin when the Founder's own magic is bowing to me in front of witnesses. Draco was shaking his head, but he was still smiling, that sharp, appreciative smile that meant he saw the elegance of it. That's a Slytherin plan, he said. I am Lord Slytherin, Harry said. About time I started thinking like one. They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the pub filling the space between them. Harry signaled for 2 more drinks. When they came, he raised his glass slightly. Thank you, he said. For this. For telling me. Draco picked up his glass but didn't drink. I'm not doing this for you, he said. I want that clear. I'm doing it because my father is about to commit a magical crime that would destroy our family entirely if it fails, and it will fail, because you're you, and someone needs to stop the idiot before he gets us all killed. That's the same thing your mother said. Different words. We're pragmatists. Draco drank. It runs in the blood. Draco. Harry waited until the other man met his eyes. Your mother asked me to give you a path forward. Something useful to do. Draco's expression shuddered immediately. I don't need your charity, Potter. It's not charity. It's an offer. Harry set down his glass. I need someone who understands how these families think. How they plot, what they value, where their pressure points are. Hermione's brilliant, but she learned pure-blood politics from books. You learned it at the dinner table. You want me to be your spy. I want you to be my advisor. Openly. Publicly. Harry watched Draco's face carefully. Lord Potter, Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell's political advisor on pure-blood affairs. It's a real position. Paid. Respected. And it sends a message, that I'm not trying to destroy pure-blood culture. That there's a place in the new world for people willing to do better. Draco was very still. His glass suspended halfway to the table, his grey eyes unreadable. Harry could see the war, the pride that rebelled against working for Harry Potter, the pragmatism that recognized this was the best offer he'd get, and beneath both, something else. Something that might have been relief at being given a purpose that wasn't his father's. "I'll think about it," Draco said finally. "That's all I ask." "You're infuriating. You know that?" "I've been told." They finished their drinks without speaking. When Draco stood to leave, he paused beside the booth and said, without looking at Harry, "The ritual. If they get your blood, even a drop, they can do it within 48 hours. Don't let anyone touch you Monday. Not a handshake, not a pat on the back, nothing." "I won't." Draco nodded once and walked out into the rain. Harry sat alone in the booth, turning his glass slowly, thinking. A ripple of displaced air beside him, and Ron's head appeared from under the cloak. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered. "They're going to try to steal your blood. You heard all of it? Every word. I was right there." Ron pulled the cloak off entirely and crammed himself into the seat Draco had vacated. "Harry, this is serious. This isn't politics anymore, this is dark magic. Blood rituals. I know. We need to tell Kingsley. The Aurors, and tip off not that we know." "No." Harry shook his head. "We handle it Monday. My way. Your way being, walk in, make the chair glow, scare them shitless. That's the general shape of it, yes." Ron looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "You know, you're actually quite frightening these days." "Good," Harry said. "That's rather the point." Sunday passed in preparation. Harry returned to Hogwarts with Hermione and spent 4 hours in the headmistress's office studying ward diagrams, understanding the layers of Founder's magic that protected the castle. He could feel them now, for distinct threads of power woven into the very stones. The Gryffindor thread was warm and brave, a protective fire. The Slytherin thread was cool and cunning, a web of detection and misdirection. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were beyond his reach. He could sense them but not interact with them, like hearing music through a wall. He practiced reaching for the threads. The Gryffindor magic came easily, it responded to intent, to courage, to decisive action. The Slytherin magic was subtler. It required thought, planning, precision. It didn't want to be grabbed, it wanted to be asked. Politely. With clear purpose. By Sunday evening, Harry could feel the Slytherin Lordship seat in the Wizengamot from across the country. It was old, older than the chamber around it, carved from black stone that hummed with a millennium of accumulated magic. And it knew he was coming. Monday morning. Gringotts. Harry dressed carefully, not the full regalia, that was for the afternoon, but clothes that communicated wealth and confidence without arrogance. He wore all 3 rings openly and carried himself the way Sirius once had, loose-limbed, casual authority that dared the world to challenge it. The goblins at the door of Gringotts watched him approach with expressions that were hard to read. Goblin faces weren't built for human emotional interpretation, but Harry caught something in the way they shifted. Alertness. Recognition. He walked to the head teller's window. "Lord Potter Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell," he said clearly, requesting an audience with Director Ragnarok. The teller, an elderly goblin with silver-rimmed spectacles, looked at him without blinking. "The director does not see clients without appointment. The director will see me." Harry placed his left hand flat on the marble counter, all 3 rings visible. The Peverell Lordship carries right of audience with the Goblin Nation. Established in the Treaty of 1289 and never revoked. The teller looked at the rings. Looked at Harry. Looked at the rings again. "Wait here," the goblin said, and vanished through a door behind the counter. Harry waited. Around him, the bank lobby went about its business, witches and wizards at other windows, carts rattling in the depths below, the enormous chandelier casting warm light across the marble. But he could feel eyes on him. Goblin eyes, from positions throughout the lobby. Guards. Assessors. Watchers. 5 minutes. 10. 15. The door behind the counter opened. A different goblin emerged, taller than the teller, dressed in armor rather than banking robes. A warrior guard. Harry recognized the type from his break-in, though he'd been somewhat too busy fleeing for his life to study them closely. Lord Peverell, the warrior guard said. Not Potter. Not Gryffindor. Peverell. The name the goblins respected. The director grants audience. Follow. Harry followed the guard through corridors he'd never seen, deeper into the bank than the vaults, into areas that were clearly goblin territory rather than public-facing banking halls. The architecture changed, less marble, more raw stone, carved with geometric patterns that pulsed faintly with magic. Goblin wrought, goblin warded. They descended 3 flights of stairs and emerged into a chamber that made the Wizengamot look like a village hall. It was vast. Circular. Lined with columns of dark stone that reached up into shadow. At the center, on a raised platform, sat a goblin in armor that looked like it was made of starlight, silver and pale gold, worked in patterns so fine they seemed to move. Director Ragnarok. Harry had never seen him before. He was old, far older than any goblin Harry had encountered, with a face like carved granite and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. He did not rise as Harry approached. Harry didn't expect him to. Lord Peverell, Ragnarok said. His voice was deep for a goblin, resonant. You invoked the right of audience. This has not been done in 143 years. I'm aware, Director. I appreciate you honoring it. Honor has nothing to do with it. The treaty binds. Ragnarok's burning eyes studied Harry with frankly unsettling intensity. You are the wizard who broke into my bank. No point denying it. Yes. And escaped on a dragon. Yes. And you walk in here now, wearing the Peverell ring, invoking ancient treaty rights, asking for an audience. A pause. You have impressive audacity. Thank you. It was not a compliment. But something in Ragnarok's expression shifted, not warmth, nothing so soft, but a recalibration. State your business. I've been told that someone within Gringotts is working with Augustus not to challenge the legitimacy of my inheritance ritual. I'm here to address that directly. Ragnarok didn't react visibly, which told Harry more than any reaction would have. The director already knew. Of course he did. Nothing happened in his bank without his awareness. The ritual was performed by Ironclaw, Ragnarok said. Who is now dead. His authority to perform inheritance rituals has been questioned by certain parties within the bank. Was it legitimate? Ironclaw was a senior ritualist. His authority was unquestionable at the time of performance. Ragnarok's eyes narrowed. The questioning came after. Motivated by a pause that managed to convey volumes of contempt, wizard gold. Not paid someone to challenge the ritual's validity. A junior administrator named Gripshard has raised formal objections to the ritual record. His objections are technically within procedure. Ragnarok leaned forward slightly. I find them transparent and insulting. A goblin performed ritual questioned because a wizard waves gold. It spits on our sovereignty. Harry saw the opening and took it. Then we have a common interest. I want my lordships to stand unchallenged. You want goblin ritual authority to be unquestioned. Not threatens both. Ragnarok studied him. What are you proposing? A public statement from Gringotts affirming the ritual's legitimacy. Signed by you, with the bank's full authority. It kills Nott's challenge before it starts. And in return? What do you want? It was a dangerous question and Harry knew it. But he also knew that the Goblin Nation operated on reciprocity, every favor had a price, every alliance had terms, and trying to get something for nothing was the fastest way to earn their contempt. Ragnarok was silent for a long time. Then he said, the Peverell vaults. They have been sealed for 3 centuries. The Treaty of 1289 grants goblins first right of assessment on any goblin-wrought items contained within, should the vaults ever be opened. "Done," Harry said. "You can have assessors present when I open them. First right of assessment on any goblin-crafted items. And the matter of the break-in." Ragnarok's eyes glittered. "There is a debt. A dragon. Significant property damage. It has not been addressed." Harry nodded. He'd expected this. "Name a fair price and I'll pay it. From the Potter Vault, not the reparations fund, not anyone else's gold. Mine." Another long silence. 20,000 galleons. And a formal apology. In writing. Displayed in the lobby. Harry almost laughed. The apology would sting more than the gold. A lord, apologizing publicly to goblins, displayed for every witch and wizard who walked through the doors. "Done," he said. Something changed in Ragnarok's face. Surprise, maybe, that Harry hadn't haggled, hadn't blustered, hadn't tried to talk around the apology. "You are not like other wizards," Ragnarok said. "I've been told." Ironclaw chose well. The director rose from his seat, barely taller standing than sitting, but his presence filled the chamber. "You will have your statement by this afternoon. Signed, sealed, and warded against forgery. Gripshard's objection will be formally overruled by close of business today." "Thank you, Director." "Do not thank me. Fulfill your terms." Ragnarok descended from his platform and walked toward Harry until they were 3 feet apart, looking up with those ancient, burning eyes. "And Lord Peverell, the next time you need a dragon, ask. We have several." Harry blinked. Was that a joke? With goblins, you could never quite tell. He bowed, the proper goblin depth, 15 degrees, which acknowledged respect without submission, and left the chamber with the warrior guard. By the time he emerged into the lobby, he felt lighter. One front secured. Knott's Gringotts play was dead before it started. Now for the afternoon. The Committee on Magical Heritage Preservation met in a small chamber off the main Wizengamot hall, a room lined with old tapestries and furnished with a long table surrounded by heavy chairs. At the head of the table, the Slytherin seat, an ancient throne of carved black stone, unoccupied for 5 centuries, kept there as an artifact, a piece of history. Harry felt it the moment he entered the ministry. A pull in his bones, the Slytherin ring humming against his skin. "Here. Come here. Sit." He arrived at the committee chamber at exactly 2 o'clock, wearing the full regalia Hermione had commissioned. The robes moved around him like living shadow, the family crests catching light that shouldn't exist in the torchlit corridor. He looked, he knew, like something out of the old paintings in Hogwarts, a lord from another age, walking with the casual assurance of someone who knew the ground would hold because it belonged to him. The chamber door was closed. Harry didn't knock. He pushed it open and walked in, and every head at the table turned. 6 committee members, Augustus Nott at the far end, gray-haired and sharp-featured, with eyes like a hawk's. 2 witches Harry didn't know well, Eleanor Greengrass and Millicent Bulstrode's mother, both sacred 28 wives who'd inherited committee seats. 2 wizards, Marcus Flint's father, heavy and dull, and old Tiberius Ogden, who was technically neutral but had been on the committee for 40 years and resisted all change on principle. And 1 empty chair. The Slytherin seat. It sat at the head of the table like it had been waiting. Black stone, carved with serpents that wound around its arms and up its back, their eyes empty hollows that had once held emeralds, stolen or lost centuries ago. Harry walked past the committee members without acknowledging them. Past Nott, whose hawk eyes tracked him with cold intensity. Past the empty chairs. Straight to the black throne. He sat down. The effect was immediate and devastating. The serpents on the chair moved. Stone grinding on stone, they uncoiled from the armrests and raised their heads, their empty eye sockets filling with green light, not emeralds, but magic. Pure Slytherin green, blazing in the dim chamber. The carved snakes turned their heads toward Harry, regarding him, and then, slowly, deliberately, they bowed. The entire chair pulsed once with power. Green light raced along every carved line, every scale, every fong, until the whole throne blazed like a beacon. The runes carved into its base, invisible for 500 years, ignited in sequence, spelling out words in a language older than English, older than Latin. The heir sits. The line continues. The seat acknowledges. Harry felt the magic settle around him like a mantle. The Slytherin ring burned hot for one instant, then cooled, bonded, complete. He'd known the lordship was his. Now the seat knew it too. And everyone in this room could see it. The committee members were frozen. Nott's face was a mask, but his hands, flat on the table, had gone white at the knuckles. The two witches had pushed back from the table as if the light might burn them. Flint's father looked like he might be sick. Only Ogden seemed more fascinated than frightened, leaning forward with wide eyes. Harry settled into his chair, and looked at Augustus not down the length of the table. "I received your summons," Harry said pleasantly. "Something about a heritage preservation discussion?" Nott stared at him. 5 seconds. 10. Then the mask slid back into place, smooth, controlled, revealing nothing. But Harry had seen underneath it. He'd seen the fear. "Lord Potter," Nott said. His voice was steady. "Impressive. We were not aware you would be, sitting there. Where else would Lord Slytherin sit in the Wizengamot, Mr. Nott?" Harry leaned back, perfectly at ease, the stone serpents curling lazily around his forearms. "This is my seat. It's been empty for 5 centuries, but it's mine. Shall we proceed with the meeting?" Nott's eyes moved to the door, then back to Harry. Whatever he'd planned for this meeting, whatever blood-stealing stratagem he'd prepared, it was ashes now. You didn't touch a lord sitting in a founder's seat with the founder's magic visibly protecting him. You didn't try. The committee, Nott said slowly, called this meeting to discuss concerns about the recent activation of dormant lordship claims and their impact on magical heritage. "Excellent topic," Harry said. "I'm very concerned about magical heritage. Particularly the heritage of allowing Dark Lords to rise, terrorize the populace, and then escape consequences because their families held committee seats." He smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "Shall I elaborate?" Eleanor Greengrass made a small sound. Nott's jaw tightened. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. It accomplished nothing. Nott had clearly planned to use it as a vehicle for his challenge, and with Harry sitting in the Slytherin seat with its magic blazing around him, the challenge was laughable. No one on the committee was going to argue that Harry wasn't the legitimate Lord Slytherin when the Lord's own chair had just accepted him in front of witnesses. Harry answered every question calmly, deflected every insinuation with ease, and spent the entire time radiating the quiet confidence of someone who knew he'd already won and was simply allowing his opponents to realize it at their own pace. When the meeting ended, Harry stood. The serpents on the chair bowed to him again, then settled back into stillness, stone once more, eyes dark. But everyone had seen them move. Everyone would remember. Harry walked to the door and paused beside Nott's chair. The older man looked up at him with those cold hawk eyes, and for a moment, something passed between them, an acknowledgement that the game had changed, that the old strategies wouldn't work, that this was going to be something new and dangerous for both of them. "Augustus," Harry said quietly. "Tell Lucius the ritual won't work. The blood won't help you. And if you try it anyway," he leaned down, just slightly. "I killed the last wizard who went after Slytherin's power. And I was 17. He straightened. Walked out. Didn't look back. In the corridor outside, he found Hermione waiting with a rolled piece of parchment and a fierce expression. "Gringotts' statement," she said, holding it up. "Arrived 20 minutes ago. Full authority of the director, sealed with Goblin Ward magic. Ironclaw's ritual is officially, permanently, unquestionably legitimate." Harry took the parchment and felt its weight, heavier than paper should be, dense with goblin magic. The seal was silver and still warm. "And the committee?" Hermione asked. The chair glowed. The snakes bowed. Not looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Harry grinned. "I think we can call that a win." "The challenge?" "Dead. He can't bring it now, not after the whole committee watched the founder's seat except me. He'd be laughed out of the Wizengamot." Hermione let out a breath she'd clearly been holding since morning. "Then we're ahead." "We're ahead," Harry confirmed. "For now." They walked together through the ministry corridors, and Harry could feel it, the subtle shift in the air around him. People glancing. Whispering. Stepping aside. Not from fear, exactly. From recognition. From the dawning understanding that the world had changed and the thin, dark-haired young man in the triple-crested robes was the one who changed it. The Slytherin ring pulsed warm against his finger. Satisfied. Good, Harry thought at it. But we're just getting started. Monday was over. The first volley had been fired, the first defenses had held, and the enemy knew it. Now came the real game. Chapter 4, Blood and Gold. 3 days after the committee meeting, someone tried to kill Harry Potter. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't clever. It was a killing curse fired from a rooftop on Diagon Alley at 10:30 in the morning, while Harry was walking from the leaky cauldron toward Gringotts with a sheaf of reparations paperwork under his arm. The green light streaked down from above, that specific, unmistakable shade of green that Harry knew better than anyone alive. His body moved before his mind caught up, years of combat reflex snapping him sideways. The curse hit the cobblestones where he'd been standing and blew a crater 2 feet wide, scattering chips of stone like shrapnel. Harry didn't run. Didn't duck into a shop. Didn't even look up immediately. He stood perfectly still in the middle of the street while screaming witches and wizards scattered in every direction, and he felt. The Slytherin ring was already working, that cool, detecting thread of Founder's magic reaching outward, mapping the space around him. Rooftop. Third building on the left. Flourish and blots. One figure. Moving already, running toward the back edge of the roof. Harry raised his left hand, the one with the rings, and pulled. He didn't know a spell for what he did. There wasn't one in any textbook he'd ever read. But the magic came anyway, pouring through 3 lordship rings simultaneously, and the air above flourish and blots rippled. The running figure, cloaked, masked, anonymous, suddenly stopped running. Because the roof tiles were moving. Curling up like fingers, wrapping around their boots, locking them in place. The building was obeying Harry. Not because he'd cast a specific charm on it, because magic permeated every structure in Diagon Alley, old magic layered into the stones by centuries of wizards, and 3 lordships gave Harry a voice that old magic listened to. The assassin struggled. Blasted at the tiles with their wand. The tiles held. Harry apparat. Not to the street, to the rooftop, directly behind the struggling figure, close enough to smell the sweat and fear rolling off them. The crack of his arrival made the assassin spin, but their feet were locked and they stumbled, nearly falling. Harry caught them by the throat. Not gently. "Mask off," he said. The assassin raised their wand. Harry's free hand moved and the wand flew, not Expelliarmus, just raw magical authority ripping the wood from their fingers. It sailed over the edge of the roof and vanished into the street below. Mask. Off. The figure was shaking now, full body tremors, the kind that came from realizing you'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. Their gloved hands came up and pulled the mask away. Thorfinn Rowell. Harry knew the face, broad, blonde, brutal. The Death Eater who tried to kill him in a London cafe after Bill and Fleur's wedding. Who'd fought at the Battle of Hogwarts. Who'd somehow avoided Azkaban in the chaos of the post-war trials. Rowell, Harry said flatly. Of course. Get off me, Potter, Harry's hand tightened. Not enough to choke, just enough to communicate. You just fired a killing curse at me in broad daylight in a street full of civilians. There are children in Diagon Alley right now. Children. His voice had gone very quiet, which was worse than shouting. Give me one reason not to throw you off this roof. Raoul's eyes were wild. Not said, he said you'd, not sent you. Not a question. Said we had to move fast. Before you consolidated, before the goblins, Raoul was babbling now, the bravado of a man who'd expected to fire from a distance and run, not to be caught in 3 seconds flat by a target who could command the very stones beneath his feet. He said it was the only way to what? To stop you. Raoul's face twisted. You're taking everything. The seats, the gold, the manor, you're dismantling everything that let people like you torture and kill without consequence. Harry released Raoul's throat and stepped back. The Death Eater sagged in his stone restraints, gasping. Yeah. I am. And you thought a killing curse from a rooftop would stop that? It stopped Dumbledore, Raoul spat. Harry went very still. The 3 rings pulsed simultaneously, ruby, emerald, violet, and the temperature on the rooftop dropped 10 degrees. Raoul flinched back so hard he nearly ripped his own feet free. Dumbledore was ambushed by someone he trusted, Harry said softly. I trust no one in a position to ambush me. And I am not Dumbledore. He raised his wand, his own wand, holly and phoenix feather, which he'd had in his hand since the moment the curse missed. Incarcerus. Ropes wound around Raoul like living things, binding arms and legs and torso until the man was wrapped tight as a package. Harry released the tile lock and Raoul toppled forward, hitting the roof face first with a satisfying crunch. Harry sent a Patronus, the stag galloping into nothing, with a message for the Auror office. Then he sat on the edge of the roof and waited, looking out over Diagon Alley while the morning sun climbed higher and the screaming below gradually died as people realized the danger had passed. Ron arrived first, of course he did, trainee or not, he'd have run the moment the Patronus reached him. He operated onto the rooftop with his wand drawn and his eyes blazing, saw Raoul trussed on the tiles and Harry sitting calmly on the edge, and let out a breath that was half relief and half fury. You're all right, Ron said. Fine. Didn't touch me. I'm going to kill him. Ron's wand pointed at Raoul with clear intent. You're not. He's going to Azkaban and he's going to tell the Aurors everything about who sent him. Harry stood, brushing roof dust from his robes. But first, he walked back to Raoul and crouched beside the bound man. Tell me about the ritual. The Lordship breaking. When is not planning to do it? Raoul's bloody face, he'd broken his nose in the fall, screwed up with defiance for about 2 seconds. Then Harry let the Slytherin ring's magic pulse against the ropes, and Raoul felt the weight of 1,000 years of authority pressing down on him, on his dark mark, on the magical bond that made him, however distantly, part of Slytherin's conquest chain. Friday, Raoul gasped. This Friday. At the Wizengamot. During the full session, he's going to call for a formal challenge and use the ritual during the proceedings. He has my blood. Raoul's eyes went wide. Guilty wide. The committee meeting. Monday. The parchment you signed, the attendance register. Harry closed his eyes. The attendance register. He'd signed in at the door of the committee room, standard procedure, a quill and parchment. He'd been so focused on avoiding handshakes, pin rings, blood quills, so focused on the obvious methods, that he'd signed a standard piece of parchment without a second thought. The quill, he said flatly. Enchanted. Micro-extraction. You wouldn't have felt it, just takes a few cells from the fingertip when you hold it. Raoul was talking fast now, desperate to be useful, to be someone worth keeping alive. Knott's had it since Monday night. He's been preparing the ritual, needs 3 days of moon charging or something, I don't know the details. Harry stood. Looked at Ron. Get him to the DMLE. Full interrogation. Veritaserum if you can get authorization. Kingsley will authorize it in a heartbeat after this, Ron said grimly. He hauled Raoul upright with one arm. Ron's height and build made it look easy, and prepared to side along. Harry. Friday. That's 4 days. I know. What are you going to do? Harry looked at his left hand. The 3 rings were still pulsing, not with agitation but with purpose. The Slytherin ring particularly seemed focused, alert, directing his attention downward. Below. Deep below. I'm going to the Chamber of Secrets, Harry said. Today. Now. Whatever Slytherin left down there, whatever knowledge, whatever magic, I need it before Friday. Ron nodded once, sharp and decisive. I'll get Hermione. We'll meet you at Hogwarts. Ron, the Aurors. Someone needs to. I'll hand Raoul off to Dawlish and come straight to you. 20 minutes. He gripped Harry's shoulder briefly. Don't go into that chamber alone. I won't. Harry paused. Actually, get Neville too. He's Lord Longbottom. If Nott's moving on Friday, I want my allies in the room. Done. Ron disapparated with Raoul in tow, and Harry stood alone on the rooftop of Flourish and Blots with the morning sun on his face and a cold knot of purpose in his chest. 4 days. Nott had his blood, just a trace, just cells from a fingertip, but enough for the ritual. Friday, in the full Wizengamot session, Nott would attempt to strip Harry's Slytherin lordship through blood magic performed in front of the entire governing body. Unless Harry found a way to make it impossible. He disapparated to Hogsmeade. The gates opened for him again. The path cleared. The castle hummed with recognition and something that felt almost like concern, as if the stones could sense his urgency. McGonagall met him at the entrance hall. She was dressed for a workday, spectacles glinting, but her expression was sharp with alarm. I felt the wards react, she said. Something happened. Assassination attempt. Killing curse in Diagon Alley. I'm fine, he added quickly, as her face went white. Raoul. He's been caught. But there's more. He told her about the blood theft. About the ritual. About Friday. McGonagall listened with her lips pressed into a thinner and thinner line until they nearly disappeared. They stole your blood in a Wizengamot committee room, she said when he finished. That is medieval. These are medieval people. Harry's jaw was tight. I need the chamber, Minerva. Whatever Slytherin left down there, libraries, research, wardcraft, I need it now. Can you, take you there? I certainly can. McGonagall straightened her spine. And I'm coming with you. Don't argue. Harry didn't argue. They walked together through the corridors, the castle shifting around them, doors opening, staircases realigning, until they stood before the second-floor bathroom that Harry hadn't visited since he was 12 years old. The sinks looked the same. The tap with the tiny snake was the same. The cracked mirror and dripping faucets were the same. But nothing else was, because Harry was not a frightened 12-year-old anymore, and when he opened his mouth and spoke in Parseltongue, it wasn't with a child's tentative hiss but with the full authority of Lord Slytherin. Open. The sink separated. The floor split. The pipe entrance revealed itself, but it wasn't the pipe Harry remembered. Instead of a dark tunnel dropping into nothing, there was a staircase. Wide, smooth, carved from the same black stone as the Slytherin seat in the Wizengamot. Lit by green flame torches that ignited as Harry spoke, marching downward into the depths. It was a pipe before, Harry said, confused. The castle reshapes itself for its masters, McGonagall said quietly. It was a pipe for a 12-year-old Parselmouth. For the Lord Slytherin. She gestured at the elegant staircase. It shows you what it truly is. They descended. The air grew cool but not damp, not the wet, sewer-like atmosphere Harry remembered. The staircase spiraled down and down, the green torches lighting their way, and the Slytherin ring pulsed steadily like a heartbeat marking their descent. The chamber opened before them like a cathedral. It was not what Harry remembered. The last time he'd been here, it had been flooded, dimly lit, populated by a basilisk and the memory of a teenage Dark Lord. Now, responding to its true master, the chamber revealed its real form. It was vast. 100 feet high, the ceiling lost in shadow above. Columns lined a central nave, but between them, where Harry remembered empty dark water, were alcoves. Dozens of them. Each containing something different, shelves of books, workbenches with ancient equipment, displays of objects Harry couldn't identify, doors leading to further rooms. The water was gone, drained or never truly there, an illusion, maybe, maintained for intruders. The great stone face of Salazar Slytherin still dominated the far wall, but in the torchlight, it looked less like a threat and more like a monument. A founder watching over his legacy. Merlin, McGonagall breathed beside him. In all my years, I had no idea. Harry walked forward, drawn by the ring's insistent pull. Past the first alcove, books, thousands of them, bound in leather that should have rotted centuries ago but was perfectly preserved by magic. Past the second, a potions laboratory, cauldrons and ingredient racks and crystalline vials that caught the torchlight like liquid gems. Past the third, the fourth, each revealing new depths of Slytherin's thousand-year legacy. The ring pulled him to the seventh alcove. Here, the shelves held not books but objects, magical artifacts, each resting on a stone pedestal with runes carved around the base. Harry scanned them, not understanding most of what he saw, until his eyes landed on something he recognized. A bowl. Simple, carved from dark stone, with runes running around its rim. A pensive, but not like Dumbledore's. Older. Rougher. The runes were in a language Harry didn't know, but the Slytherin ring did. He reached for it and the runes blazed green. Welcome home, heir. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Not the ring, something older. Something embedded in the chamber itself. A recording, maybe. A message left 1,000 years ago for whoever came next. If you hear this, the line has continued. The seat has accepted. The knowledge awaits. Harry's hand rested on the pensive's rim. What knowledge? The wards. The bindings. The protections I wove into this castle for the children who would come after. My life's work, not the beast, not the blood feud with Godric, my work. Preserved here for the heir who would need it. I need it now, Harry said. There's a ritual, a lordship breaking, yes. I know of it. I created the defense against it. Harry's heart hammered. You created, I was no fool. I knew that enemies would seek to break what I had built. The lordship-breaking ritual was invented by my contemporaries, Rowena helped, though she later denied it, and I crafted the counter within a year of its creation. The voice held a note of ancient pride. No one breaks what Slytherin has bound. The defense is in this pensive. Take it. Learn it. It requires the Lord's own blood, willingly given, poured over the seat of power. It creates a permanent seal that no external ritual can breach. Harry pulled his hand back from the bowl. My blood. Willingly given. Freely. Without coercion. Poured in acknowledgement of the bond between Lord and legacy. It is not dark magic, it is binding magic. The same magic that sealed the lordship in the first place, renewed and reinforced by choice. If I do this, if I pour my blood on the Slytherin seat in the Wizengamot, then no power on this earth can sever your claim. The ritual becomes permanent. Unbreakable. Even death cannot end it, it passes to your heir by your will, not by blood alone. Harry stood in the greenlit chamber with the weight of 1,000 years pressing against him. The counter-ritual was simple. Almost anticlimactically simple. His blood, willingly given, on the seat that had already accepted him. But it meant something more than just defense, it meant permanence. Choosing this. choosing to be Lord Slytherin not as a political tool, not as a temporary measure, but as an identity. A legacy. 5 years, he'd told Kingsley. 5 years and then he'd sunset the Lordships. But if he sealed the Slytherin claim permanently, does the seal prevent voluntary dissolution? Harry asked the empty air. Silence. Then, you would consider, giving it up. I would consider a world that doesn't need it. A long pause. When the voice came again, it held something that might have been respect. Or surprise. Or both. The seal prevents external breaking. It does not prevent the Lord's own choice. You may always choose to release what you have chosen to hold. That is the nature of true authority, it is given, not taken, and what is given may be returned. Harry exhaled. All right. I'll do it. Friday, before the session. I'll seal the claim and let not try his ritual. Let him waste his power on something that can't be broken. There is more, air. The pensieve contains my wardcraft. Take it. Study it. The castle's protections can be strengthened, they have weakened over centuries without a lord's attention. And the other schools of magic within this chamber, potions, enchantment, healing, they are yours now. Use them. Share them. I hid knowledge from the world in a fit of pride and rage, and that was my great sin. Do not repeat it. The voice faded. The runes dimmed. The chamber was silent except for the soft crackle of the green torches. Harry turned to find McGonagall standing 10 feet behind him, her face pale and her eyes very bright. You heard that, Harry said. Every word. Her voice was barely a whisper. 1,000 years. 1,000 years of magical knowledge, sealed down here because of a feud and a snake and a man's wounded pride. She looked around the chamber, at the books, the laboratories, the artifacts, with an expression that was half grief and half exhilaration. Harry, do you understand what this is? This isn't just defense against not. This could be, a library, Harry said. A research center. Open to everyone, not just Slytherins, not just purebloods. Everyone. He looked at the vast space, seeing not what it was but what it could become. We open this. We catalog it. We share it with the school, with the public, with the world. Slytherin's legacy stops being about a monster in a basement and starts being about knowledge. McGonagall's hand found his shoulder and gripped hard. Yes, she said. Yes. That's exactly right. She took a breath, composing herself. But first I deal with not. I know. Harry touched the pensieve again, gently. I need to study this tonight. The sealing ritual, the wordcraft, I need to understand it before Friday. Take it with you. The pensieve. Bring it back when you're done. McGonagall's headmistress voice was back, practical, decisive. I'll begin cataloging the library tomorrow. Filius can help, he's the best at preservation charms. Harry lifted the pensieve carefully. It was lighter than it looked, the stone almost warm under his hands, as if pleased to be useful again. He tucked it under his arm. Minerva. Thank you for coming down here with me. Someone had to make sure you didn't touch anything that would kill you. But she was smiling. Go. Prepare. And Harry, she caught his arm as he turned. Be careful on Friday. Augustus Nott is not Raoul. He won't come at you with a curse from a rooftop. He'll come at you with something you don't expect. I know, Harry said. That's why I'm going to hit him first. He spent Tuesday and Wednesday inside the pensieve. Slytherin's memories were not like Dumbledore's, not narrative, not linear. They were lessons. Structured, deliberate, designed to transfer knowledge to an heir. Harry fell into them like diving into deep water and emerged hours later with his mind buzzing and his understanding of magic fundamentally altered. The sealing ritual was the first thing he learned. Simple in execution, 3 drops of blood, willingly given, spoken words in Parseltongue, contact with the seat of power. But the theory behind it was profound. The lordship wasn't just a title, it was a magical bond between a wizard and a legacy. Sealing it meant making that bond part of your very magical core. Inseparable. Permanent as breath. The wardcraft came next. Slytherin had been a genius with protective magic, layers within layers, traps within traps, defenses that didn't just block attacks but redirected them. Harry absorbed techniques that hadn't been practiced in a millennium, feeling them settle into his magical understanding like puzzle pieces finding their places. By Wednesday night, he felt different. Not more powerful, exactly, the raw power had been there since the lordships. But more precise. More intentional. He understood now what the rings did, how they channeled, what the old magic wanted and how to work with it rather than simply commanding it. Hermione watched him practice ward work in the basement of Grimmauld Place with an expression caught between fascination and concern. "You're different," she said. "Since the chamber. Better or worse?" "Different." She crossed her arms. "Harry, this magic, Slytherin's magic, it's changing how you cast. Your wand movements are different. Your incantations are." "I'm not using incantations for most of it anymore," Harry said, and demonstrated, a flick of his fingers and the basement's protective wards reconfigured, layers sliding into new patterns like a lock being picked. No words. No wand. Just intent and the authority of 3 houses channeled through his hands. "That's wandless and non-verbal," Hermione said flatly. "Simultaneously. The lordships are conduits. The rings focus the magic, I don't need a wand for most things anymore. The wand helps with precision, but the raw channeling," he shrugged. "Slytherin did all his work this way. Gryffindor too, probably. They didn't use wands the way we do. That's a later development." "You're talking about Founders-level magical ability," Hermione said slowly. "I have Founders-level magical authority. The ability is catching up." Hermione was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Harry, after Friday, after not, we need to talk about what you're becoming." "I know who I am, Hermione. I'm not worried about who you are. I'm worried about what others will see." She uncrossed her arms and came to him, taking his hands, rings and all. 3 lordships. Wandless magic. The ability to command buildings and restructure wards with a thought. You're not just politically powerful anymore. You're magically dangerous in a way that no one's been since, don't say Dumbledore. I was going to say Merlin. She squeezed his hands. People will fear you. More than they already do. And fear makes people do stupid, desperate things. Like send Raoul with a killing curse. Exactly like that. But worse. Raoul was one idiot on a rooftop. What happens when it's 20 idiots organized by someone smart? Then I'll deal with 20. Harry squeezed back and released her hands. I'm not going to hide what I can do. You said it yourself, if I hide, they'll find out eventually and it'll look like deception. If I'm open, at least they know what they're dealing with. There's a difference between being open and being terrifying. Hermione pressed her lips together. Provocative. Maybe they need to be provoked. Harry turned back to the ward work, spinning another layer into existence with a gesture. Maybe the problem, for the last 1,000 years, has been powerful people pretending to be less than they are. Dumbledore could have ended Grindelwald in 1920 but he hid from it for 20 years. He could have taken Voldemort seriously in the 70s but he played chess games instead. Maybe, he let the ward settle into place with a pulse of violet light. The answer isn't restraint. It's responsibility without restraint. Being as powerful as you actually are and using it for something good. That's a fine line, Hermione said. I know. That's why I have you. And Ron. And Neville. He turned back to her. If I go sideways, you stop me. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Hermione studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, firmly. The deal holds. Good. Now help me figure out the timing for Friday. I need to seal the claim before the session starts, which means getting to the Wizengamot early enough to, the floor roared in the kitchen above them. Footsteps, quick, urgent, and then Ron's voice calling down the basement stairs, Harry. Hermione. Get up here, now. They took the stairs two at a time. Ron was standing in the kitchen with soot on his aura robes and a face like thunder. Knots moved the session up, Ron said. It's not Friday anymore. It's tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. He convinced Marchbanks that there's an urgent matter of magical security, something about the unauthorized activation of Founders' artifacts within a government building. Ron's jaw clenched. The committee meeting. The chair glowing. He's framing it as a security threat and calling an emergency session to address it. Tomorrow, Harry said. That gives me, he checked the clock. 11 at night. 10 hours. He knows, Hermione said, her voice tight with realization. He knows you went to the chamber. He knows you found something. He's accelerating before you can prepare. I'm already prepared. Harry's voice was calm. The panic he might have felt a week ago, even a day ago, simply wasn't there. The knowledge from the pensieve sat in his mind like bedrock. The magic hummed in his rings, ready. The sealing ritual takes 5 minutes. I'll get to the Wizengamot at 7, seal the claim, and be in my seat when the session starts. And Knott's ritual? Ron asked. Let him try it. Harry flexed his left hand. The rings pulsed, ruby, emerald, violet. 3 houses. 3 legacies. 1,000 years of magic answering to one wizard. Once the claim is sealed, his ritual hits a wall it can't break. He'll burn out his own magic trying. And if he does something else? Hermione pressed. Something we haven't anticipated. Harry looked at her. At Ron. His best friend since he was 11 years old. The people who'd followed him into death and come out the other side. Then I handle it. Whatever it is. Because I'm done being afraid of what people like Augustus Knott might do. He straightened his shoulders. He wants an emergency session. Fine. He wants to challenge me in front of the full Wizengamot. Fine. He'll get his session. And he'll learn what happens when you come for the Lord of 3 houses in the seat of his own power. Ron and Hermione exchanged a glance. Then Ron grinned, that wild, reckless Weasley grin that usually preceded something either glorious or catastrophic. I'll be there, Ron said. Gallery. Armed. I'll have the legal documentation ready, Hermione said. Gringotts statement, ritual legitimacy records, everything. If there's any procedural move he tries, we'll be ready. Harry looked at the clock again. 10 hours. I need to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. He didn't actually expect to sleep. But when he lay down, the Peverell ring pulsed once, that deep, heavy pulse that felt like the earth turning, and sleep took him like a stone dropping into dark water. No dreams. Just rest, deep and complete, as if the magic itself was ensuring he'd be sharp when he woke. Harry arrived at the Ministry of Magic at 6:45 in the morning. The atrium was nearly empty, a few maintenance witches, a security guard who goggled at him but didn't dare speak, and the eternal golden fountain that someone had repaired since the war. He took the lift to the Wizengamot level. The corridor was dim, unlit, silent. The chamber doors were closed but not locked, they opened at his touch, heavy oak swinging inward without resistance. The Wizengamot chamber was dark. Empty. The gallery seats loomed in shadow above. The benches where members sat were black shapes in the gloom. But at the head of the chamber, on its raised platform, the Slytherin seat was visible, the faintest green luminescence clinging to its carved serpents, as if the chair were breathing in its sleep. Harry walked across the chamber floor. His footsteps echoed in the silence. The rings were awake, all three of them, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat, guiding him forward. He reached the seat and stood before it. Black stone. Carved serpents. 1,000 years of power sleeping in the rock. Harry drew his wand, not because he needed it, but because the ritual was about precision and the wand helped focus that final degree. He pressed the tip of hollywood against his left palm and whispered a cutting charm. Pain, brief, bright, and blood welled up. Dark red in the dim green light. 3 drops. That's what the pensieve had taught him. 3 drops, and the words. Harry turned his hand and let the first drop fall onto the arm of the chair, where the largest serpent's head rested. I am the heir. Parseltongue, low and deliberate. The drop sank into the stone. The serpent's eyes flickered. Second drop. On the seat itself, the smooth-worn stone where generations of lords had sat. I claim what is mine. Freely. Without coercion. By my own will and my own blood. The stone drank the blood. The green luminescence strengthened, spreading outward from the drops like ripples in water. Third drop. On the base. The foundation. I seal this bond. Let no power break it save my own choice. Lord and legacy. Bound eternal. The chamber ignited. Green light, not faint, not subtle, blazed from every surface of the Slytherin seat. The serpents writhed to life, their stone bodies flowing like water, their emerald eyes burning with inner fire. The runes on the base erupted in cascading light, spelling out the ancient words of binding in characters that hung in the air like green stars. And then the light expanded. Out from the chair, across the chamber floor, up the walls, across the ceiling. Green and gold and violet intertwined, all 3 lordships responding, amplifying, reinforcing. The Gryffindor ring blazed and the old Gryffindor seat, across the chamber, carved in red stone, empty even longer than Slytherin's, answered with crimson light. The Peverell ring pulsed and something in the very foundations of the building, older than the Wizengamot, older than the Ministry, rumbled and woke. Harry stood in the center of a storm of ancient magic and felt it pour into him. Not new power, recognition. The bond sealing. The claim becoming permanent. Part of him now, woven into his magical core like a new strand of DNA. It lasted 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then it faded, withdrawing back into the stone, into the rings, into Harry himself. The chamber was dark again. Silent. But the Slytherin seat was different. Its serpents were alert, heads raised, eyes open, burning green. Watching. Waiting. And on the armrest where Harry's blood had fallen, a new rune had appeared, carved into the stone as if it had always been there. The Potter crest. Right there, in the arm of Slytherin's 1,000-year-old seat. Harry healed his palm with a murmured charm and sat down in the chair. It welcomed him, warm stone, carved to fit, perfect. The serpents curled around his arms like living guards. Sealed, the ring hummed. Unbreakable. Ours. Ours, Harry agreed quietly. He sat in the dark chamber and waited for dawn. For his enemies. For whatever came next. He was not afraid. By 9 o'clock, the chamber was full. Every Wizengamot member present, 63 of 67, the best attendance in years, drawn by the scent of drama and conflict. The gallery was packed again, reporters and onlookers jostling for position. Kingsley in his observer's seat, face carefully neutral. Neville 2 rows behind him, the long-bottom ring glinting on his hand, his expression calm and ready. Ron in the gallery with his wand up his sleeve and his Auror senses on full alert. Hermione beside him with a bag full of documentation and a mind full of arguments. And at the head of the chamber, Harry, already seated in the Slytherin chair when the members filed in. Already there. Already glowing faintly green, the serpent's awake and watching. Already occupying his seat of power with the casual certainty of someone who'd been there for hours. He watched the members react as they entered. Some glanced and quickly looked away. Others stared openly. A few, the braver or more politically astute, nodded in his direction. Acknowledgement. Deference. Augustus Nott entered last. He was dressed impeccably in charcoal robes, his grey hair swept back, his hawk face composed. He carried himself with the easy authority of a man accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room. He looked at Harry in the Slytherin seat. At the glowing serpents. At the new Potter crest carved into the stone. Something flickered behind his eyes. But his stride didn't falter. He walked to his seat, 4th row, left side, and sat down without a word. Marchbanks called the session to order. This emergency session has been called at the request of Committee Chair Nott regarding a matter of magical security within this chamber, she announced. Chair Nott, you may present your concern. Nott rose. Smooth. Controlled. Thank you, Chief Warlock. He adjusted his robes and addressed the chamber with practiced eloquence. My concern is simple and serious. 3 days ago, during a routine committee meeting, Lord Potter activated what appears to be a Founder's artifact embedded within this building, the so-called Slytherin seat. He gestured toward Harry without looking at him. This activation produced a significant magical discharge that has not been evaluated for safety. This chamber is the seat of our government. Uncontrolled magical activation within it represents a security risk that must be assessed. Murmurs through the chamber. Nott continued. I propose an immediate magical assessment of the artifact in question, and a temporary suspension of its use pending that assessment. Additionally, and here his voice took on a harder edge, I move for a formal review of the process by which Lord Potter came to claim authority over this artifact. The legitimacy of his Slytherin lordship remains, in my view, insufficiently verified. Point of order, Neville said immediately, rising from his seat. His voice was clear and carrying, not loud, just absolutely certain. The legitimacy of Lord Potter's Slytherin lordship has been verified by Gringotts director Ragnarok himself, in a formal statement issued 4 days ago. Does Chair Nott wish to challenge the authority of the Goblin Nation over their own ritual practices? Nott turned to look at Neville. Something cold moved behind his eyes, annoyance, perhaps, that the Longbottom boy was playing politics instead of plants. Lord Longbottom raises a valid point, Marchbanks said. The Gringotts statement is in the record. However, Chair Nott's security concern regarding the artifact itself is within the committee's purview. Lord Potter, she looked at Harry, do you wish to respond? Harry didn't stand. He remained in the Slytherin seat, the serpents curled around his arms, and spoke from his position of power, literally and figuratively above everyone else in the room. The Slytherin seat is not an uncontrolled artifact, Harry said. His voice carried easily, the seat amplified it, just as it had in the committee meeting. It is a founder's legacy that has responded to its legitimate lord for the first time in 5 centuries. It is no more a security risk than the Sorting Hat or the Sword of Gryffindor or the Castle of Hogwarts itself. He let his gaze sweep the chamber. But I understand the concern. New magic is frightening, especially when it's old magic that most people have forgotten existed. He paused. So let me put this plainly, for every person in this chamber. The Slytherin seat has accepted me. This is not a claim I'm making, it is a fact that 60 people witnessed 3 days ago and can witness again right now. He rested his hands on the serpent-carved armrests, and the chair responded, a pulse of green light, brief but unmistakable. I am Lord Slytherin. By right of conquest, verified by the Goblin Nation, sealed by blood ritual this morning. This claim is permanent. It cannot be challenged, revoked, or, he looked directly at Nott, broken. He let that word hang in the air. Watched Nott's mask flicker. Watched the hawk eyes narrow as the implication landed. Broken? Nott repeated, his voice carefully neutral. An interesting choice of word, Lord Potter. I'm an interesting man, Chair Not. Harry's smile was thin and sharp. I'm also aware that certain parties have been researching very old, very illegal magical rituals designed to sever lordship claims. Blood magic. The kind that requires stolen components and willing conspirators. The chamber went very quiet. Not's face was stone. That is a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. Attempted lordship breaking carries a mandatory sentence in Azkaban, life imprisonment, if I recall the statute correctly. Harry's eyes never left Not's. Hermione. From the gallery, Hermione's voice rang clear. Statute of Magical Authority, Section 14, Subsection 3, any attempt to sever, interfere with, or destroy a magically legitimate lordship claim through ritual means shall be punished by life imprisonment in Azkaban, forfeiture of all properties and titles, and permanent suppression of the offender's magic. Passed in 1714 after the Gaunt incident. Never repealed. Thank you. Harry settled back in his chair. So here's what's going to happen, Augustus. You're going to withdraw your motion. You're going to sit down. And whatever you had planned for this session, whatever ritual components you've prepared, whatever conspirators you've arranged, you're going to abandon them. Today. Now. Publicly. Not stared at him. The chamber held its breath. Or, Harry continued, I can ask for Thorfinn Rowell to be brought from his holding cell to testify, under Veritaserum, about who sent him to assassinate me on Tuesday, who commissioned the lordship-breaking ritual, and who stole my blood from a committee room using an enchanted quill. He paused. Your choice, Augustus. Just like I gave Lucius a choice. The silence was crushing. Every eye in the chamber was on Not. Every Wizengamot member, every reporter, every person in the gallery was watching the most powerful behind-the-scenes political operator in Britain have his machinations laid bare in public. Not's jaw worked. His hands, hidden below the bench in front of him, were trembling. Harry could see the slight movement in his shoulders. The mask was cracking. Not shattering the way Lucius's had, Not was too disciplined for that, but cracking. Fracture lines spreading through the composure of a man who'd spent 40 years operating in shadow and had just been dragged into full sunlight. He stood. The chamber tensed. I withdraw my motion, Not said. His voice was level. Controlled. But thin. Paper thin. The security concern has been addressed to my satisfaction. And the lordship challenge? Marchbanks pressed. She wasn't stupid, she could read the room. A beat. 2. 3. There will be no challenge, Not said. Each word was extracted like a tooth. Lord Potter's claim is, evidently legitimate. Wonderful, Harry said. I'm glad we could resolve this so efficiently. Was there any other business? Marchbanks looked around the chamber. No one moved. No one spoke. 63 Wizengamot members sat in their seats and said nothing at all. Session adjourned, Marchbanks said, and the gavel fell. Not was the first to leave, walking out with rigid control, not running but moving with the deliberate speed of a man retreating from a battle he'd lost before it began. Several members followed him, allies, sycophants, people whose fates were tied to his. Harry watched them go from his elevated seat and felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just the cold, clear certainty that this wasn't over, that Not would regroup, rethink, come at him differently. But not today. Today, he'd been beaten. Publicly. Thoroughly. The chamber emptied slowly. Harry remained in the Slytherin seat, the serpents coiled peacefully around his arms, until only a few people remained, Neville, approaching from the floor with a look of quiet satisfaction, Ron and Hermione descending from the gallery, Kingsley, still in his observer's seat, watching Harry with that complex expression. Neville reached him first. That was surgical, Neville said simply. He didn't even get to start. That was the point. Don't let the enemy fire, take away the weapon before they can aim it. Harry stood from the chair, and the serpents released him reluctantly, settling back into their stone coils. Thank you. The point of order, that was perfectly timed. I've been studying parliamentary procedure, Neville said with a slight smile. It's more useful than herbology in this arena. Ron arrived with a wide grin. His face. When you said broken, his face was, Ron. Hermione's hand on his arm. Not here. There are still people watching. She was right. A few reporters lingered near the gallery exits, quills scratching. Harry descended from the platform and walked toward the chamber doors, his allies falling into step around him. They moved as a unit, not arranged, not deliberate, just the natural formation of people who'd been through fire together and knew their positions. In the corridor outside, away from observers, Harry let out a breath he'd been holding for 4 days. It's done, he said. The claim is sealed. Nott's challenge is dead. Rowell's in custody. So what now? Ron asked. Harry looked at his left hand. 3 rings. 3 legacies. The Slytherin ring was quiet now, satisfied, sated, secure in its permanent bond. The Gryffindor ring was warm with the eternal steady heat of bravery acknowledged. The Peverell ring was heavy with the weight of death and mastery and the long patience of old power. Now, Harry said, we build. The reparations fund. The Hogwarts reforms. The chamber library. The new Wizengamot structure. He looked at his friends, his allies, his family. Nott's going to try again. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but he'll try. Let him. Every day he spends plotting against me is a day I spend building something better. Hermione smiled. That's the plan I like. It's the only plan that matters. Harry started walking toward the lift. Come on. I need breakfast. I've been sitting in that chair since 7 and I'm starving. They walked together through the ministry, for young people who'd saved the world once and were now, methodically and deliberately, remaking it. Behind them, the Wizengamot chamber sat empty and silent, the Slytherin seat still glowing faintly green in the darkness. Waiting for its lord to return. Chapter 5, The New Order. 2 weeks after the emergency session, Augustus Nott made his final move. Harry almost missed it. That was the dangerous thing about Nott, he didn't telegraph. He didn't bluster or threaten or send assassins from rooftops. He moved like water finding cracks in stone, silent and patient and relentless until the foundation gave way. It started with a letter from Narcissa, delivered at 3 in the morning by a bedraggled hired owl that looked like it had been flying against the wind for hours. Harry, it's not political this time. He's gone around you. Around the Wizengamot, around the ministry, around everything you've built. He's invoked the right of ancestral challenge. I don't have time to explain fully. Come to the manor, what's left of it. Now. Draco will explain. He's been researching this since the committee meeting because he suspected Nott would go this route if everything else failed. This is not a trap. I swear it on my magic. Come now. Harry was out of bed and dressed in 60 seconds. He paused only to send Patronus messages, the stag galloping silently through the walls of Grimmauld Place, splitting into 3, racing to Ron, Hermione, and Neville with the same words, Nott's moved. Going to Malfoy residence. Meet me there. He apparat to the address Narcissa had included, not the manor itself, which was in ministry hands pending conversion, but a smaller property on the edge of the Malfoy grounds. A gatehouse, elegant but modest by Malfoy standards, surrounded by low hedges and wards that Harry felt part as he approached. The wards recognized his lordship and opened like curtains. Narcissa met him at the door in a dressing gown, her hair loose, her face drawn tight with something Harry hadn't seen on her before, genuine fear. Inside, she said. Quickly. The gatehouse was warm and well lit despite the hour. A fire burned in the sitting room, and Draco was there, not in nightclothes but fully dressed, surrounded by books and parchment, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was disheveled, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, ink stains on his fingers. He looked up when Harry entered, and his grey eyes were electric with urgency. "You know what the rite of ancestral challenge is?" Draco said without preamble. "No." "Sit down." Draco shoved a stack of books aside to clear a chair. "It's old. Older than the Lordship system. Older than the Wizengamot. It predates everything we think of as wizarding government." He grabbed a piece of parchment covered in his own cramped handwriting. "The rite of ancestral challenge doesn't attack your claim. It doesn't try to break your lordship. It challenges your worthiness to hold it." Harry sat. Worthiness. The magic itself judges. Not the Wizengamot, not the goblins, not any human institution. The rite invokes the original intent of the founder, in this case, Slytherin, and asks whether the current lord fulfills that intent. If the magic judges you unworthy, the lordship strips itself. Draco's voice was rapid, intense. Nott isn't trying to break the bond anymore, he can't, after your sealing ritual. He's trying to convince the magic that you shouldn't have it. On what grounds? Slytherin's values. Cunning. Ambition. Willingness to do whatever is necessary. Draco met his eyes. Nott's argument, and he'll make it to the magic itself, not to any human court, is that Harry Potter is fundamentally a Gryffindor. That you won the lordship by combat, which is a Gryffindor method, not a Slytherin one. That you don't think like a Slytherin, don't value what Slytherin valued, and therefore the magic should reject you. Harry absorbed this. Can it work? Draco hesitated. That hesitation said everything. It shouldn't, Draco said carefully. The sealing ritual you performed creates a permanent bond. But the rite of ancestral challenge it's from before the sealing rituals were invented. It's more fundamental. It speaks to the base layer of the magic, the founder's original intent, which is woven into the lordship itself. If Slytherin's own magic decides you're not what it wants, then the seal breaks from the inside. Harry's voice was flat. Yes. Silence. The fire crackled. Narcissa stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, watching. How is it invoked? Harry asked. That's the part that worries me. Draco pulled another parchment from his pile. It requires someone of the same bloodline or magical lineage to issue the challenge. Someone connected to Slytherin's legacy. The Dark Mark connection, Harry said immediately. Same as the lordship-breaking ritual. Exactly. Any living Death Eater can invoke it, they're magically connected to Slytherin's line through Voldemort. Draco's jaw tightened. My father can invoke it. And if he does, on Nott's behalf, at Nott's direction, the magic will manifest a trial. A test. In front of whoever's present. What kind of trial? I don't know. The sources are vague. They say the founder's magic chooses the test based on the lord being challenged. It's different every time. It tests worthiness, whatever that means to the specific legacy. Harry stood. Paced to the window. Outside, the Malfoy grounds stretched away under a grey pre-dawn sky, mist curling between ancient trees. When? He asked. Today. This morning. Narcissa's voice from the doorway. Lucius left 2 hours ago. He took something from a locked drawer, something Nott gave him. I don't know what it was, but he was afraid. He didn't want to do it. But Nott, she stopped. Nott has something over him. Something worse than what you have. Harry turned. What could Nott have that's worse than a triple lordship debt claim? I don't know, Narcissa said, and the admission clearly cost her. My husband has secrets. Even from me. Things from the First War, maybe, or, I don't know. But not pulled the string and Lucius went. Where? The Wizengamot chamber. Draco stood, scattering parchment. The right has to be invoked at a seat of power. The Slytherin chair is the most powerful Slytherin site accessible to them. You've already locked down the Chamber of Secrets. Harry's mind raced. Lucius was in the Wizengamot chamber right now, in the middle of the night, with whatever ritual component Nott had given him, preparing to invoke a challenge that spoke to the base code of the Lordship magic itself. I need to be there, Harry said. That's what I'm trying to tell you, you can't prevent the invocation. Once it starts, the magic takes over. You can't fight it, can't block it, can't refuse it. Draco gripped his arm. But you can pass the test. Whatever it is, you pass it, and the right fails. Permanently. It can never be invoked against you again. And if I fail? You lose the Slytherin Lordship. The seal breaks. Everything built on that claim, the Malfoy debt, the political authority, the Hogwarts connection, collapses. Harry looked at his left hand. The Slytherin ring sat on his finger, cool and alert, not panicked, not distressed, but aware. Waiting. It knew what was coming. And it wasn't fighting it. Because the ring wanted to be held by a worthy lord. That was its nature. That was what Slytherin had built into it. The challenge wasn't an attack, it was a question. And the ring wanted to know the answer. I'll pass it, Harry said. Not bravado. Not hope. Certainty, the bone-deep kind that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he was capable of. Whatever the test is. I'll pass. 3 cracks of apparition outside, Ron, Hermione, and Neville, arriving together. Harry heard them at the door, heard Narcissa let them in, heard the quick murmur of explanation as Draco briefed them. Then they were all in the sitting room, Harry's allies, his friends, plus 2 Malfoys who'd chosen their side, and the clock on the mantel read 4:30 in the morning. We go now, Harry said. All of us. I want witnesses. Harry, Hermione started. This isn't a fight, Hermione. It's a test. If I pass, and I will, I want the whole world to know that the magic itself judged me worthy. That ends this. Permanently. No more challenges, no more rituals, no more attacks on my legitimacy. He looked around the room. Ron, solid and ready, wand already in hand. Hermione, brilliant and terrified and trusting him anyway. Neville, calm as stone, the Longbottom ring steady on his hand. Narcissa, pale but composed. And Draco, who'd spent days researching this. Who'd come to Harry with the warning. Who was standing in his own sitting room at 4 a.m. helping the man who'd made his family kneel, because he'd chosen to be something other than his father. Draco, Harry said. Come with me. Something passed across Draco's face, surprise, quickly masked. Why? Because if this test is about Slytherin's values, cunning, ambition, doing what's necessary, then I want someone who understands those values standing beside me. Someone who can tell the magic what I am when I might not have the words for it myself. Draco stared at him. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right. Let's go. They apparat to the ministry entrance, the visitor's entrance, the red telephone box, because the Fleur network was monitored and Harry didn't want Nott's people knowing they were coming until they arrived. The box descended. The atrium was dark, empty, echoing. Their footsteps rang against the marble floor as they crossed toward the lifts. He'll have wards, Hermione said quietly. Around the chamber. If Lucius is performing a ritual, he'll have whatever Nott gave him, Harry agreed. But I have 3 lordships and the Slytherin seat already answers to me. His wards won't hold. The lift took them down. The Wizengamot level was darker than Harry had ever seen it, no torches lit, no maintenance spells running. Someone had deliberately killed the lights. Someone wanted privacy. Harry walked down the corridor toward the chamber doors. He could feel it now, the magic building behind those doors. Not aggressive, not hostile. Just, enormous. Old powers stirring, ancient questions forming, the founder's legacy waking fully for the first time in centuries. The doors were warded. Complex layered protections, knots work, precise and professional. Harry didn't even slow down. He raised his left hand and the 3 rings blazed simultaneously, ruby, emerald, violet, and the wards didn't break. They recognized. They folded themselves aside like servants stepping out of a lord's path. Harry pushed the doors open. The chamber was lit by a single source, the Slytherin seat, blazing green at the far end, brighter than Harry had ever seen it. And before it, on his knees, was Lucius Malfoy. Lucius was chanting. Low, rhythmic, in a language that wasn't Parseltongue but something adjacent, an older tongue, pre-runic, the language of wizards before languages were formalized. His wand was pressed against the base of the Slytherin chair, and from the point of contact, green light spiraled outward in patterns that hurt to look at directly. He wasn't alone. Augustus Knott stood behind him, 10 feet back, watching with those hawk eyes. Composed. Patient. The architect watching his builders work. Knott turned when the doors opened. His face showed nothing, not surprise, not alarm, not even displeasure. Just cold acknowledgement. Lord Potter, he said. You're earlier than I expected. You expected me at all? Harry walked into the chamber. Behind him, his allies fanned out, Ron and Neville to the flanks, Hermione staying near the door with her documentation. Draco moved to Harry's right side and stayed there. Of course. The right requires the challenged lord's presence to complete. I assumed Narcissa would inform you, she's been feeding you information since the first week, hasn't she? Knott's voice held no anger at this revelation. Just mild acknowledgement of a piece that had moved as predicted. It doesn't matter. The invocation is nearly complete. Lucius's chanting was intensifying. The light from the Slytherin seat pulsed with each word, growing brighter, the serpents writhing in their stone. But they weren't bowing to Lucius, they were agitated, disturbed, being summoned rather than welcomed. Father. Draco's voice cut through the chanting like a blade. Stop. Lucius faltered. His eyes opened, glazed, unfocused, lost in the rhythm of the ritual, and found his son standing beside Harry Potter. Confusion. Then rage. Draco, what are you? Get away from him, finish it, Lucius, not commanded. Cold. Absolute. Now. Lucius looked between his son and Knott. Harry saw the moment, the terrible, crystallized moment, when Lucius chose. When whatever hold Knott had over him proved stronger than his son's voice. Lucius closed his eyes, turned back to the chair, and spoke the final words. The world split open. Not physically. The chamber didn't crack, the walls didn't crumble. But reality shifted, the air thickened, space deepened, and suddenly the Wizengamot chamber was larger than it should be. Impossibly larger. The walls receded into shadow. The ceiling vanished into darkness above. The other seats disappeared. There was only the Slytherin chair, blazing green on its platform, and the space around it that now stretched in every direction like an infinite dark plain. Harry stood in the center of it. Alone. No, not alone. His allies were gone, Knott was gone, Lucius was gone. But something else was there. In the darkness. Watching. So. The voice came from everywhere. Not Slytherin's recorded message from the chamber beneath Hogwarts, this was something else. Something deeper. The living intent of the founder, embedded in the magic itself. Not a ghost, not a portrait, not a memory. Just, will. Purpose. Personality, distilled into pure magical force. The challenger claims you are unworthy. That you are a lion wearing a serpent's ring. That you won my legacy through brute force rather than cunning. Harry stood straight. Didn't flinch. And what do you think? A pause. Then something that might have been a laugh, low, dark, curious. I think you walked into a room where you knew a trial awaited, and you brought allies, prepared responses, and positioned yourself to turn defeat into permanent victory. That is either very brave or very cunning. Perhaps both. The hat wanted to put me in Slytherin, Harry said. When I was 11. I asked it not to. I know. I remember. The sorting hat carries a piece of each of us, each founder. I watched through it. I have watched you for years, little lord. The presence moved in the darkness, not a body, just a shift of attention, like being circled by something vast. The challenger says you lack cunning. Let me see. The darkness changed. Solidified. Became a room, not the Wizengamot, not Hogwarts, but somewhere Harry didn't recognize. A study, old-fashioned, lit by candles. A desk with a map spread across it. Pieces on the map like chess pieces, armies, Harry realized. Magical armies, positioned across medieval Britain. A scenario, the voice said. You hold power. Considerable power. But your enemies are many and they have chosen to unite against you. You cannot defeat them all by force, they are too numerous. You cannot buy them, they are too proud. You cannot wait, they grow stronger while you stand still. What do you do? Harry studied the map. The pieces. The terrain. His position, a single point of strength surrounded by converging threats. I don't fight them all, Harry said. I fight their alliance. An alliance of proud people is fragile, they're united by what they're against, not what they're for. Find the fault lines. Offer the weakest link something better than they'll get from the coalition. Peel them away one at a time until the alliance collapses. And if they hold? If the alliance leader is skilled enough to keep them together? Then I don't attack the alliance. I attack the leader. Not with force, with exposure. A coalition of proud people doesn't follow a leader they don't respect. Show them something about their leader that makes him small. Something embarrassing. Something that reveals him as less than they are. Harry paused. That's what I did to Nott. I didn't fight his coalition, I made him withdraw publicly. Made him back down in front of the people he was trying to lead. After that, his authority is diminished. And if the leader anticipates this? If he has contingencies? Then I've already won, because a man spending his time on contingencies isn't spending it on offense. I keep pushing. Keep forcing reactions. Keep making him respond to me instead of the other way around. Harry stepped closer to the map. The one who dictates the tempo wins. Always. Even if you're weaker, especially if you're weaker. Make them dance to your rhythm and they'll exhaust themselves. Silence. The map faded. The study dissolved. Harry stood in the darkness again, the presence circling. Adequate, the voice said. Then, sharper, but cunning is not merely strategy. It is also deception. Manipulation. The willingness to use others, to see people as pieces on a board. Do you have this? I used Narcissa Malfoy as an informant, Harry said bluntly. I knew she was motivated partly by self-interest, protecting her family, positioning them for the new order. I didn't care. Her motivations served my purpose. I took her intelligence, gave her what she wanted, and used the information to destroy her husband's allies. Cold. Good. And young Draco? I offered him a position knowing he'd feel obligated. Knowing the debt would bind him to me politically even as it freed him personally. He's an asset, intelligent, connected, motivated to prove himself. I made the offer sincerely, but I also made it strategically. You admit to using people. Everyone uses people. The question is whether you use them up or use them well. I don't discard people when they've served their purpose. I build them up. Make them more than they were. Harry's voice was steady. That's not kindness, that's long-term investment. A used-up ally is worthless. A strengthened ally becomes more valuable over time. You sound like a Slytherin. I sound like someone who learned from everyone. Gryffindor courage. Slytherin cunning. I'm not one thing. I never have been. The darkness shifted again. The temperature dropped. When the voice came back, it was different, harder, testing. Final question. The one that matters. The presence was close now, very close, pressing against Harry's awareness like a hand against a window. Power. You have it now, more than any wizard in Britain. What do you do with it? I use it to make itself unnecessary, Harry said. I reform the system until it doesn't need a lord to function justly. And then I step aside. You would, give up power. I'd transform it. From hereditary authority to democratic institution. The lordships go away. The seats become elected. The power that lives in these rings passes into the structure itself, the wards, the protections, the laws. So that no one person holds it again. The longest silence yet. Harry stood in the darkness and waited, his heart steady, his breathing even. He meant every word. He'd meant it when he told Kingsley, and he meant it now, standing before the distilled will of Salazar Slytherin himself. Salazar Slytherin hoarded power, the voice said finally. He kept knowledge from the world. He feuded with his peers rather than compromise. He built a chamber of secrets and sealed it away from everyone, including the students he claimed to love. A pause that resonated with something old and heavy, regret, maybe, or recognition. He was wrong. Harry said nothing. Waited. You are not what I was. You are not what I would have chosen, 1,000 years ago, in my pride and my fury. The presence withdrew slightly. Then returned, closer than ever. You are what I should have been. What I might have been, if I had been less afraid and more wise. The darkness began to lighten. The edges of the Wizengamot chamber returning, reality reasserting itself around the edges of the trial space. The challenge fails, the voice said, and the words rang with finality, not just a statement but a ruling, the magic itself rendering judgment. The Lord is worthy. The bond holds. Let no voice question it again while this Lord draws breath. Light. Blinding, absolute, green-gold-violet light erupting from the Slytherin seat with such force that it was visible through Harry's closed eyelids. He felt the magic crash through him, not painfully, but overwhelmingly. The seal in his core pulsed, reinforced, doubled, tripled. The Slytherin ring burned hot for one instant and then cooled to a warmth that would never fully leave. When Harry opened his eyes, he was standing in the Wizengamot chamber. Real-sized. Normal. The walls where they should be, the ceiling above, the benches and gallery around him. His allies were there, Ron with his wand drawn, Hermione with tears on her cheeks, Neville standing like an oak tree with his arms folded. Draco, white-faced, staring. And at his feet, collapsed on the floor like a puppet with cut strings, was Lucius Malfoy. The man was gasping. His wand had snapped, literally broken in two, the pieces smoking on the stone floor. His left arm, the dark mark arm, was smoking too, faint wisps rising from the sleeve. The magical connection that had allowed him to invoke the right had burned out. Backlash. The failed challenge consuming the energy of the one who'd called it. Not. Harry's eyes snapped to where Not had been standing, and found him on his knees. Not collapsed like Lucius, kneeling deliberately, one hand braced on the floor, his head bowed. Not in submission. In defeat. The posture of a man who'd played his final card and watched it burn. It's over, Augustus, Harry said. His voice sounded strange, deeper, resonant, carrying echoes of the old magic that had just judged him. Everything you had. Every plan, every contingency, every angle. Done. Nott raised his head. His hawk face was aged, he looked 10 years older than he had 5 minutes ago, as if the failed ritual had taken something from him too. But his eyes were still sharp. Still calculating. Still dangerous. You think this ends me, Nott said. His voice was rough. You're wrong. I have resources you haven't, you have nothing. Harry stepped forward, and the Slytherin ring pulsed with his words, not threatening, just absolute. Raoul is in Azkaban, singing under Veritaserum. Yaxley's release is being reversed as we speak. Hermione found the fraudulent signatures yesterday. Your coalition watched you withdraw publicly 2 weeks ago, and now they'll learn you tried an illegal blood ritual and failed. He crouched, bringing himself to Nott's eye level. You're done, Augustus. Not because I'm destroying you, because you destroyed yourself. You came at me with everything and none of it worked. The old families are already coming to me. The Greengrasses sent an overture 3 days ago. The Zabinis last week. Even the Parkinsons are making noises about cooperation. Harry stood. You're alone. And soon you'll be in a cell. He turned to Ron. Get the Aurors. Both of them, not for conspiracy to perform illegal blood magic, Lucius for the same plus violation of his debt claim terms. Ron was already moving. Neville too, heading for the door, wand out, ready to secure it against escape. Harry. Narcissa's voice. She'd entered at some point during the trial, slipped in silently, standing against the far wall. Now she stepped forward, her eyes on Lucius crumpled on the floor. Harry looked at her. Saw the calculation, and beneath it, the genuine pain of watching her husband destroy himself. He violated the terms, Harry said. Not cruelly. Just factually. The debt claim terms included no criminal activity against my interests. He conspired in a blood ritual designed to strip my lordship. That's forfeiture. I know. Narcissa's voice was barely a whisper. I know what it means. Forfeiture. Full forfeiture, magic, title, name. Everything Lucius Malfoy had clung to through 2 wars, 2 Dark Lords, and his own son's humiliation. Gone. Because he couldn't accept being less than what he'd been. Narcissa crossed the chamber floor and knelt beside her husband. Not in submission to Harry, in farewell. She touched Lucius's face with gentle fingers, and the man's grey eyes opened, unfocused, dazed. Sissy, he breathed. You fool, she said softly. You absolute, stubborn, proud fool. I couldn't just, you could. You chose not to. She withdrew her hand and stood, straightening her spine with visible effort. When she turned to Harry, her face was composed. A mask, but a necessary one. Take him. He earned this. Harry nodded. And you? My debt to you stands. Unaffected by his choices. She lifted her chin. I saved your life. You acknowledged it. That doesn't change because my husband is an idiot. No, Harry agreed. It doesn't. Draco hadn't moved from where he stood. His eyes were on his father, on the broken wand, the smoking arm, the pathetic figure collapsed on the Wizengamot floor. Harry watched something happen behind those grey eyes. Not grief, not exactly. More like the final severing of a rope that had been fraying for years. Draco, Harry said. Draco tore his eyes from his father. Looked at Harry with an expression stripped of every mask, every pretense, every wall he'd built since childhood. The advisor position, Harry said. Is the offer still open? Something flickered across Draco's face, surprise, or gratitude, or just the raw relief of being given a way forward in the same moment his past collapsed behind him. Yes, Draco said. It's still open. Then it's yours. Starting now. Harry extended his hand, not for a handshake but palm up. An offering. We have a lot of work to do. Draco looked at the hand. Then he took it, firm, brief, decisive. Not warm. Not friendly. But real. An alliance sealed in the same chamber where his family had knelt, in the shadow of his father's defeat, on the first morning of whatever came next. Ron returned with 4 Aurors, Dawlish, Proudfoot, and 2 Harry didn't know. They took Lucius first, dazed, unresisting, his broken wand sealed in evidence bags. Not went harder. He stood under his own power and walked between the Aurors with rigid dignity, his hawk face revealing nothing. But as he passed Harry, he stopped. The Aurors tensed. You've won, Not said quietly. This round. This game. But you're young, Lord Potter. And the world is older than you. What you're building, this democratic fantasy, it won't survive your lifetime. Power concentrates. It always has. It always will. Maybe, Harry said. But not today. And not because of men like you. Not's mouth thinned. He turned and walked between the Aurors and out of the chamber, and Harry never saw him again as a free man. Dawn broke over London while they were still in the ministry, giving statements and signing parchment and managing the avalanche of bureaucracy that followed the arrest of one of the country's most powerful political figures. Kingsley arrived by 6, looking exhausted and relieved in equal measure, and took Harry aside in his office. It's done. Kingsley asked. It's done. The rite failed. The magic judged me worthy, permanently. There's no more challenge anyone can make. Kingsley sat heavily in his chair. Augustus not. In all my years as an Auror, I never had enough on him to bring charges. 20 years of knowing exactly what he was and never being able to prove it. Raoul's testimony. The ritual components. Lucius's confession, which is coming, because his debt claim terms now compel full disclosure of all crimes. Harry sat across from the minister. It's enough. More than enough. Kingsley rubbed his face. And the coalition? The families he organized? Leaderless. Exposed. And watching their champion get hauled to Azkaban. Harry leaned back. I think you'll find your reform bills face considerably less resistance in the next session. Kingsley studied him with those dark, penetrating eyes. You planned this. I adapted to this. There's a difference. Is there? But Kingsley was almost smiling. 4 months ago you were a 19-year-old who'd never held political office. Now you've dismantled the 2 most powerful dark-aligned families in Britain and taken down the most dangerous political operator of the last generation. He shook his head. What are you going to do next? Harry thought about it. About the chamber beneath Hogwarts and its 1,000 years of knowledge. About the reparations fund taking shape under Hermione's meticulous management. About the Wizengamot reform proposal sitting on his desk at Grimmauld Place, Neville's edits in green ink, Ron's tactical notes in red, Hermione's legal framework in her tiny precise handwriting. About the Malfoy Manor conversion plans, already approved by the Ministry, transforming a house of horrors into a place of welcome. I'm going to open Slytherin's library, Harry said. To everyone. And then I'm going to reform the Wizengamot. And then, in about 4.5 years, I'm going to dissolve my own lordships and make all of this permanent without me. You still mean to do that, Kingsley said. Not a question. I've always meant it. The power was never the point. The change was the point. Kingsley nodded slowly. Then he stood and extended his hand again, as he had weeks ago, in this same office, after the same kind of conversation. 4.5 years, Lord Potter. Let's make them count. Harry shook his hand. Let's. 1 week later, Harry stood before the full Wizengamot for what the prophet was calling, the Reform Address, though Harry hadn't given it a name. He just had things to say and a chamber full of people who needed to hear them. He stood at the speaker's podium, not in the Slytherin seat. A deliberate choice. Today he wasn't speaking as Lord Slytherin. He was speaking as Harry Potter, a man with a plan. The chamber was full. Every seat occupied. Gallery packed. Kingsley in his observer's position. Neville 2 rows back, steady as always. Hermione and Ron in the gallery, she with documentation, he with quiet pride. Draco Malfoy in a new seat, the advisory bench, a position Harry had created and the Wizengamot had approved, where political advisors could observe without voting. 4 months ago, Harry began, I claimed 3 lordships. Gryffindor. Slytherin. Peverell. I did it because the system that should have delivered justice after 2 wars had failed. Because the mechanisms of power were being used by the same people who'd enabled those wars to avoid consequences and rebuild their influence. He let his gaze sweep the chamber. Every face. Every eye. I used that power. I made a family kneel. I stripped wealth and property. I invoked ancient laws and ancient magic. I terrified people. He paused. I'm not sorry for any of it. It was necessary. The system was broken and it needed someone willing to break the people who'd broken it. Silence. Total, absolute attention. But necessary isn't the same as permanent. What I did was emergency surgery, cutting out disease before it killed the patient. It was never meant to be the new normal. He pulled a folded parchment from his robes, the same document he'd shown Kingsley months ago, now refined and expanded. This is the Wizengamot Reform Act. It dissolves all hereditary seats, including mine, over a 5-year period. It creates an elected legislature. It establishes a written constitution, the first in Wizarding Britain's history, with protections for muggleborns, half-bloods, magical creatures, and every person who's been marginalized by the old system. He held up the parchment. This is what I want the lordships for. Not to rule. To reform. And when it's done, when the new system is built and functioning, I will dissolve my claims. Voluntarily. Permanently. No Lord Potter. No Lord Gryffindor. No Lord Slytherin. Just a citizen. Like everyone else. The chamber erupted. Not in anger, in surprise, in confusion, in the particular chaos of people who'd been bracing for tyranny and received democracy instead. Harry stood at the podium and let them react, let them shout and question and argue. Neville caught his eye across the chaos. A small nod. Well done. From the advisory bench, Draco watched with that sharp, calculating gaze, but beneath it, something else. Something that might have been respect. Harry raised his hand. The noise died, not from magic, not from lordship authority. Just from the weight of what he'd said and who he was and what he'd proven over 4 months of action rather than words. I'm putting this to a vote, Harry said. Not today, in 1 month. That gives everyone time to read the full text, to debate, to propose amendments. I welcome all of it. This isn't my constitution. It's ours. He set the parchment on the podium. But I want one thing understood clearly, by everyone in this room. I have the power to impose this unilaterally. 3 lordships, founder's authority, sealed by the magic itself. I could reshape this government by force. He let that land. Watched faces pale. Watched eyes widen. I choose not to. Simple. Final. Because that's not the world I want. That's not what my friends died for. That's not what I came back from the dead for. His voice dropped but carried perfectly in the silent chamber. So this is the offer. Work with me, honestly, openly, in good faith, and we build something better together. Or don't, and in 5 years I walk away anyway and you get to build it without me. He stepped back from the podium. Your choice. He walked to the Slytherin seat and sat down, the serpents curling lazily around his arms in welcome. The chamber buzzed, arguments, agreements, alliances forming and breaking in real time. Harry watched it all from his elevated position and felt, not satisfaction. Not triumph. Hope. For the first time since Voldemort had fallen, Harry felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Not because the enemies were defeated, there would always be enemies. Not because the system was fixed, it wasn't, not yet. But because the path was clear. The direction was set. And he had people beside him who would walk it honestly. Neville approached the Slytherin seat platform after the session adjourned. "A month of debate," he said. "This is going to be exhausting." "Probably," Harry agreed. "The old families, the ones who aren't in Azkaban, they'll fight the elected seats." "Of course they will. Let them. They'll lose." "You sound very sure." Harry smiled. "The magic itself said I was worthy. What's a few votes after that?" Neville laughed, the warm, genuine laugh of a man who'd come through fire and found himself whole on the other side. "Fair point, Lord Potter." "For now," Harry corrected. 4.5 years. Then it's just Harry. Just Harry was always enough. Neville clapped him on the shoulder. "I'll start canvassing tomorrow. The Bones family owes me a favor, and Susan's got pull with the moderates." He left. Others came, well-wishers, questioners, people wanting to know details about the Reform Act. Harry answered them all. Patiently, clearly, without condescension. This was the work now, not the dramatic confrontations, not the ancient magic and blazing rings. Just the slow, steady labor of convincing people that change was survivable. Evening found Harry on the astronomy tower at Hogwarts, a place he'd avoided since that night in 6th year, but which called to him now for reasons he didn't fully examine. Draco found him there. Of course he did. "The irony isn't lost on me," Draco said, coming to stand at the railing beside Harry. The ground stretched out below them, darkening under a purple sky. The lake reflected the first stars. "I didn't plan it symbolically," Harry said. "I just wanted the view. It's a good view." Draco was quiet for a moment, looking out at the forest, the mountains, the long curve of the world. "I accepted the position." "I know. I got Hermione's memo." "Of course you did. She sends memos about everything." Draco's mouth quirked. "First day tomorrow. Official political advisor to Lord Potter, Gryffindor-Slytherin-Peverell." "For now," Harry said. "Again." "Yes. You keep saying that." Draco turned to face him. "Do you actually mean it? The dissolution. Giving up the lordships. Why does everyone keep asking me that like it's unbelievable?" "Because no one gives up power willingly. Not in the history of, ever." Harry considered this. Then he said, "My parents died so I could live free. Sirius died fighting a system that had imprisoned him. Remus. Tonks. Fred." He swallowed. Colin Creevey was 16 years old. He snuck back into a battle because he believed in something worth dying for. And what he believed in wasn't me. It wasn't Lord Potter or the boy who lived or any of this. He held up his ringed hand, then let it drop. He believed in a world that was fair. Just. Where kids like him, Muggleborn, small, ordinary, mattered as much as any pure-blood lord. Harry looked at Draco directly. "I'm not giving up power. I'm finishing the job. The power was only ever a tool. You don't keep holding the hammer after the house is built." Draco studied him for a long time. The last light of day caught the sharp angles of his face, softened his coloring. He looked younger than his 20 years, and older. "I don't understand you," Draco said finally. "I've never understood you. From the day you refused to shake my hand on the train, I never understood what motivated you. He shook his head slightly. But I think, maybe, I'm starting to. That's all I ask. They stood in silence as darkness settled over Hogwarts. Below them, the castle blazed with warm light, windows glowing, torches flickering, the eternal heartbeat of 1,000 years of magical education. Students moving through corridors. Professors in their quarters. The quiet, ordinary miracle of learning happening in safety. Harry's castle. His legacy, 2 of 4 founders, their magic in his blood, their intent in his rings. And in 4.5 years, he'd give it all away. Set it free. Let it belong to everyone instead of one man. Draco pushed off the railing. I should go. Tomorrow's going to be exhausting. Yeah. Harry turned from the view. Draco. What? Thank you. For the warning about the right. For being there. Harry met his eyes. For choosing differently. Something crossed Draco's face, vulnerability, quickly shuddered, but real. Don't make it weird, Potter. Wouldn't dream of it. Draco almost smiled. Then he turned and walked toward the staircase, his footsteps echoing down the spiral. Harry listened until they faded. Then he was alone on the tower with the night sky and the rings and the weight of everything he'd chosen. The Gryffindor ring was warm. Steady. The eternal courage of doing what was right. The Slytherin ring was cool. Alert. The endless cunning of doing what was smart. The Peverell ring was heavy. Patient. The deep wisdom of knowing when to hold on and when to let go. 3 lordships. 3 legacies. 1,000 years of power in the hands of a 19-year-old who'd chosen to use it for something beyond himself. Harry Potter stood on the astronomy tower and looked out at the world he was building. It wasn't finished. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be, not in 4 years, not in 40. But it was better. Every day, measurably, concretely better. And that was enough. That was more than enough. Below, the castle hummed its approval. The stones remembered their masters, all of them, through all the centuries, but this one, they thought, might be the best of them. Not the most powerful. Not the most cunning. Not the bravest. The most willing. To use what he had. To change what needed changing. To break what needed breaking and build what needed building. And then, when it was done, to walk away. Harry Potter smiled into the dark, adjusted the 3 rings on his hand, and went inside. Tomorrow was going to be a long day. They all were, from now on. And that was exactly how he wanted it.